Hey there everybody, Thet here, and welcome to Thet Makes a Tier List of all the Darkest Dungeon characters he's used, modded or vanilla. So as you can see, we got a pretty sizable tier list here to go through. Got about 90-something modded characters, and of course the vanilla ones added in, so easily over 100 characters to go through. Before we do, however, I want to go ahead and go through a couple of criteria and a little bit of an explanation. So the list you see here of all these little squares of people are who I have used at least one time in the Darkest Dungeon throughout all the times I've played the game in the past. And this is how I feel about where they fit onto a list. S tier, I do have the word broken under it. The reason for that is that's what I believe S plus tier is. So S plus basically means that the character has some kind of loophole, strategy, something that completely breaks the game. It's probably a lot of fun, unless you're the kind of person who doesn't like that and finds that kind of brokenness boring, then you probably won't like them. But hey, that's one of the purposes of this list. They see what I think of these characters, and then, you know, you can think about however you want on them as well. You know, maybe you don't like a certain character, you know, maybe you don't like characters over a certain tier, maybe you think they're too strong, something like that. You know, feel free to base some opinions yourself off of the opinions I'm making here today. Next thing I want to go ahead and let you know before we start is the criteria. There are basically a couple of different criteria by which I am judging these characters. First and foremost is the most obvious one, which is how effective they are in the game, which includes things like their stats, their skills, and their resistances, in addition to their versatility as well. That's also a factor. I tend to prefer versatility over none, but, you know, sometimes there can be a lot of fun had with a rigid position team. The next thing I want to let you know is that this is all going to be, like I said, personal opinion, and my preferences will play a part. If two characters are very close, in my opinion, to being on the same level, but I just like one more than the other, I will probably put them higher. Again, personal preference, playing a part, it's gonna. I'm human. That's what we do. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and start taking a look into this tier list. I'm going to start by doing all the vanilla characters first. Everyone should be in alphabetical order. There might be a couple with the word "the" in front of their name that are ahead of others or behind others, just because that's how they were loaded on the computer, and that's how they were loaded to the tier maker list. So, is what it is. It's all that it is. Let's get started with the Abomination. Abomination has a lot going for him. He has two stances, which then a lot of modders, basically their eyes, you know, widen, their pupils dilated, and they said, I have to make a character with 400 stances. But Abomination came first. Pretty fun class. I'll give him definitely credit for being fun. Transforming into a giant creature and then just slapping your enemies down. A good time being had by all. But his damage is not phenomenal in that. It does come with a downside, which definitely has to be taken into account, which is that he stresses your team and stresses himself. He does have a really good self-sustain move that lowers his stress and heals him. And in fact, that kind of segues into the fact that I think his human form is actually way better than his beast form. Like, barely competition. Human form comes with that self-sustain move. It comes with a really good stun, which you can get, I believe, 185% stun chance at max level with a couple of stun trinkets. So a phenomenal stun. Really good blight attack as well. I mean, and the stun actually does reasonable damage too. It's not like a, you know, minus 90% damage stun. It's a decent damage stun, especially with crits. I think it's great. I think he's great. I just think he's better in human form than he is in beast form. Obviously, some modded trinkets could definitely change that around, but even taking those into consideration, I think I can justify him going into A tier. I'm not putting him in S tier, though. If his beast form was as good as his human form, I would probably consider putting him in S tier. But as it is, it's not. And he doesn't have anything that I would say is super outstanding to the point where he can elevate himself into S tier. Alright, taking a look at the next one we have on the docket, we got the Antiquarian here. And let's be real, Antiquarian, not very great. I'm putting her in D tier, but to be fair, I think that's by design. She's not really that great in combat because she brings a lot of treasure to the table. You get, extra antiques, and every mod that has affected the antiquarian makes it so it's some other kind of item instead. Get them after battle as well. If you take the antiquarian, you're walking out with a ton of extra gold. Problem is, you get 50, 60 weeks in, your gold problems are mostly over, depending on how well you've been saving and investing, if you built the bank, etc., etc. So you don't really need the antiquarian anymore. That's it. Fire them all. Get them out of here. What do you got? Like a okay blight, barely okay heal, some debuffs, some buffs, force people to protect you. Yeah. I think, honestly, one of her more useful moves might be to go ahead and combine her with, or at least more fun combinations, I should say. Would be to combine her with, like, the Highwayman, have the Highwayman protect her, buff dodge, get the riposte going. That could be a lot of fun. But, I mean, outside of that, she doesn't really bring in much to the table herself anymore. And again, that's by design. That's how the character's supposed to be. There's no problem with it. She's still fun, especially in the early game, when you need to build up your coffers. But after that, she can go. Up next, we got the Arbalest. Good damage, great damage with marks, of course. Kind of built that way. Problem is, of course, she's relegated to the back rows. Blind Fire has low accuracy and it hits a random target, so it has, limited utility in the front couple of rows, which definitely hurts her standing a bit. I think that out of all the mark characters, I don't think the Arbalest is necessarily the best, but the heal is definitely pretty good, and I think will at least put us into B tier. If I were to consider C tier just okay and B tier good, I would say the Arbalest is good. Would I say the Arbalest is a great class? I don't know about that. I want to say that the Arbalest is definitely a good choice for backline, although if I were when I'm personally setting up vanilla teams, not always the first one that I think of when it comes to the backline. When I think of the backline, I either tend to think of support or one of the other classes that are coming up. So I think I'm comfortable putting the Arbalest in B tier. Definitely has potential to be really good, especially with a couple of correct trinkets. And of course, on a marking team, obviously brings her way more potential. All right, moving on. We have the Bounty Hunter next. Now, the Bounty Hunter, another marker, doesn't have a heal, but he brings to the table 2 stun moves, both of which are pretty good. Uppercut, decent damage for a stun move, and of course the stun itself, and a knockback. And the Flashbang, which I think has one of the highest natural stun chances in the game. And it shuffles the enemy. Doesn't do any damage, but it has so much utility that it almost doesn't matter. Especially if you're on like the first turn, you have someone else who needs to put down the mark first. Throw down the Flashbang, stun them, have someone else mark them, and then on turn 2, he comes in with Collect Bounty, does an absolutely insane amount of damage. Extra good against humans, because he already gets extra damage against humans, and then even more on top of that against marked humans. He brings a lot. I'm actually going to put him over the Abomination so far. So he's at the top of A tier. As you can see, as I've kind of demonstrated here, farther left they are, closer they are to the letter, the better I think they are in their tier, to the point where, Arbalest is currently the best of B tier, because he's the only one there, but who knows how long that'll last. Let's move on from the Bounty Hunter, and then we go to our next section here, and we grab the Crusader. So the Crusader, I'm not going to lie, probably a little bit of personal preference in here. I love the Crusader. Love his design, love his barks, love his abilities, love his tankiness, love just about everything about him. But even when I step back and think about just how good he is, he's super tanky. He has good damage and great damage in the ruins. He's like you have to take him in the ruins. Unless you want to make the game a little bit harder for yourself, you have to take a Crusader. He has a decent AoE move for the first 2 rows. He has a stun, which is kind of solid and has decent damage on it. He has a heal. He has a stress heal. He has an ability to mark himself and up his own protection. He has basically everything except for a riposte. And honestly, the riposte isn't enough to gate you out of S tier, in my opinion. I'm going to put the Crusader in S tier. I think you could put him anywhere, any position, even in the back row. Make him Holy Lance for the first few turns. You'll get a ton of damage out of that. Not to mention, if you just keep him in the back row, you can throw down stress heals. as well. He can work on basically any team. He can work in any of the different dungeon areas. You name it, the Crusader can be useful there. So I can't see him anywhere but S tier, or like the very highest of A tier. But honestly, I think it's justifiable to put him in S. So as far as vanilla characters, first S tier. I think it's well deserved personally. Next up, we have the Grave Robber. Grave Robber also gets a little bit of a personal preference bonus. I do like the Grave Robber. I don't think I use her enough in my modded playthroughs because I think she holds up well, even in most of the modded iterations. But Grave Robber, good damage, great crit chance on her moves, really good blight that also lowers the enemy's blight resist, making blights even easier, so she goes great on a blight team. A stun as an escape move in case she gets put in the wrong position, and pick to the face does come with armor piercing as well, so a little bit of extra utility there against high protection enemies. No support utility, of course, but I don't think she needs it. She's very good at what she does, and honestly, I think she's better than the Bounty Hunter, only because crits are pretty darn strong in this game, and she basically has the... I believe she might even have the highest vanilla crit chance, except for maybe the Occultist. It's her and the Occultist who I think have the highest natural crits. But watching her get a crit on Flashing Daggers, which already has reasonable damage, great accuracy, getting crits off of that move just makes your day every time. So Bounty Hunter, definitely A. A lot of that's just how fun she is to play, but also her skills and abilities make up a good chunk of that preference as well. Not to mention her pretty darn good dodge chance. Make sure to mention that. After the Grave Robber, we get the Hellion. Hellion, first position, fantastic, phenomenal, 10 out of 10. Second position, okay, fine, 3 out of 5. Any farther back, you're basically trying to move her to the front, and you're doing it with an attack that gets way weaker every time you use it. So if she's in the 4th position, you basically need to waste a move to move her forward, or you need to use that breakthrough, which is going to make her a lot weaker every time. I think she's a little too situational because of that. She needs to be somewhere where you have a rigid team or some move resist to keep her in the front row. You have her there, though. She does an amazing amount of damage. That said, I don't think I would call her great. I think I would call her good. And I think I would put her... this is tough. No, I think I'm going to put her below the Arbalest. Thinking about it, Arbalest is much better in the back row than the Hellion is in the front. Plus, Blind Fire, I think, is a better attack than Breakthrough. I know it's probably a little controversial because Breakthrough does a ton of damage. Not a ton, but a good amount of damage to the first 3 rows. But Blind Fire hits a random enemy, has okay accuracy, does good damage, ups her speed, and because it still does decent damage, you don't feel like you're getting weaker when you use it, which will give you time to move someone else and start positioning her back by moving everyone else forward again. I think that's how I feel about it. It could change, but I feel pretty comfortable putting the Arbalest above the Hellion. I don't feel like either of them are as good as the Abomination, especially keeping him in human mode and letting him just absolutely wreck the first 3 rows with nearly unbeatable stuns. But they are definitely good. They're not going down to okay, and they're not going down to bad. But, or, not great, or whatever you're going to call D tier. I didn't label it. You can label it. After the Hellion, who is in B tier, we have the Houndmaster, who is going to be in A tier, easily. I mean, I think he's a better backliner than the Arbalest. He has also extra damage on Mark, extra damage against Beast, which stacks with the Mark, which means huge damage, like Bounty Hunter level damage on Beast. He has a Mark himself, of course. He comes with a self-sustain move with the heal. His real downside, in my opinion, is his stress move, which isn't AoE stress, but it's percentage-based, so it doesn't always work on everybody, and sometimes it works on nobody. Yay, wasted turns. But his stun in the first couple of positions is actually a very good stun as well. I think it's at the same level as the Bounty Hunter's... I think it's at the same level as Flashbang. I could be off on that. But it's also a very good stun. It has a couple of very good trinkets that make that stun stronger. So if you wanted to put him in the second position and have him be a stun master, you could totally do so. I like him more than the Bounty Hunter. I think the Bounty Hunter does more raw damage. But honestly, if you look at these three right here, that you pair them with a good healer, you could have a hell of a team. Just with that right here. So, I think they all belong in A tier. I think I like the Bounty Hunt or the Grave Robbers higher crit chance more than I like the Houndmaster's bleed. Oh, I don't know. Hound's Harry is really good. Yeah, I think I'm gonna switch them around. I'm gonna put the Houndmaster at the top of A tier for now. We'll see if he remains there. He probably won't once we get into the modded characters, but for now, I'm going to put him at the top of A tier. I think he's really, really good. He has a lot of versatility. Obviously, at places with bleed resist, he's not nearly as good anymore, but he can go through most dungeons and be a value to some kind of value to the team. Either in the front as a stunner or in the back as a bleeder. The only place where I think he really doesn't do that well would probably be the Cove, because those are Eldritch enemies and they're mostly bleed resistant. But anywhere else, I think he brings a lot to the table. Enough. Oh, yeah. Nah, I'm changing my mind. I'm changing my mind right here. Yeah, right here. I'm gonna keep the bounty. I'm gonna keep the Grave Robber at the top of A. I have to, because she's better in the Cove and she's good in anywhere. Mainly because she's damage based instead of having part of that damage be based on AoEs. Yes, she does, or DOTs, damage over time. Yes, she does have a good damage over time skill, but that's only really something you need to use regularly in a dungeon that she needs to use it in. Otherwise, her basic damage on Thrown Dagger and Flashing Daggers are more than good enough. So I think that just brings her utility and her versatility above the Houndmaster, even if it is just in raw damage. Highwayman, S tier, easy. He only does one thing. He hurts people. He does it very well. He can buff his own damage, of course, and a couple of other his stats with Tracking Shot. He can shoot with extra damage against marks. He can AoE, which is a pretty decent one. He can, of course, use Point Blank Shot, which is a fantastic first round, first move for huge damage. He can Duelist Advance to give him a riposte so that he can hit enemies back while he moves himself forward to use Point Blank Shot again. Perfectly common strategy. A lot of people know about it. A lot of people love it. A lot of people swear by it. He's a darn good class. Whether you're building him for his knife or for his gun, he basically can do great damage anywhere. Just straight up anywhere. To the point where the fact that he doesn't have any support or utility doesn't even matter. That's how good he is at damage. Now, of course, you can't build... I mean, you can try, but you can't really do much with a 4 Highwayman team. He's going to need someone else, but that's what we have high-tier supporters for as well. Alright, speaking of which... it's a pretty high-tier supporter, actually. The Jester. Stress healer extraordinaire, especially in the vanilla game. He is the top-tier stress healer in the vanilla game. No contest. Really good buffs with Battle Ballad. He has really, really good bleeds for someone who I consider a support, first and foremost. And he has the fun finale strats, which are more fun than actually usable, except in the Butcher Circus, where, it avoids Death's Door, or circumvents it, I should say. But in the vanilla game, in the regular game, he brings a ton to the table still. Question is, I think he's definitely better than the Abomination. Is he better than the Bounty Hunter? Bounty Hunter brings damage and stun versus what the Jester is bringing, which is bleed, stress, and buffs. Stress relief, more specifically. And his damage is actually pretty decent, and his bleed is really, especially his AoE bleed. I think he is above the Bounty Hunter for that AoE bleed, and again, the marvelous stress relief. His camping skills for stress relief are second to none as well. Second... No, I'm going to say second to none, but Houndmaster actually does give him a good run for his money. Houndmaster also brings bleeds. He brings not very good stress relief, but he can bring it. I think the Houndmaster has a little bit more versatility on the Jester, and that moves him up a little bit more. But if we were just talking stress heal, Jester would be top of the class, S tier. It's just, we're not. We're talking about everything. So, Houndmaster, I think, edges him out in just a couple other things. Now we got the Leper. Speaking of versatility, This man does not have it. He works in the first 2 positions. He does practically nothing anywhere else, although I believe you can use 1 move from the 3rd position as well. When he's in the front 2, he's pretty good. Slaps very, very hard. Has a lot of self-sustained moves, including a heal/stress heal. His accuracy's not that great, although you can have things that counteract that. So he works well with other classes, but that's the thing. While he can be very self-sufficient, he's just better with other classes. Personally, I think I'm going to put him at the bottom of B tier. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to think whether I like him more or less than the Hellion, and that's a tough one. I think I'm going to put him at the bottom of B tier. I don't think he's just okay. I think he is good. He's way too situational, though. And outside of that situation, you can't do much. If you get a surprise shuffle and he gets moved to the back row, congrats. You can't do anything for a while unless everyone else can get him moved up immediately. Yeah, and that just hurts him too much. I think that automatically disqualifies anyone for S tier, and that also makes it really hard to stay in A tier as well. So I think I'm comfortable putting him there. I think at least the Hellion has breakthrough, and she can also use Adrenaline Rush, I believe, from any position as well. So she can have some self-sustain from the back. Leopard doesn't even have that. Okay, you put him in the front, you know, you get these 2 in the front, you could mow down enemies like crazy, but you know, as soon as you get someone who has some movement, you might have some trouble. And that trouble is enough to keep you out of the top tiers. Up next, we got the Man-at-Arms. A Defender Extraordinaire, oddly enough. Has some good buffs with Command. He has his Defender, of course, and he has a Riposte with Retribution. Very good combo. Used to be absolutely broken. And at that time, he probably would have gone in either S or S plus tier when he first came out with his Retribution. It was phenomenal. Just you take 2 of them, game's over. But he's not nearly that good anymore. He's been debuffed quite a bit. He has a pretty decent stun that also allows him to move forward, which I think is perfectly fine. I don't think he's going to quite make it to A tier. I think the Abomination has better stuns, has a damage over time, which is really good, has good self-sustain, and can also switch forms to do good damage as well, and outclasses the Highwayman in pretty much every field there, except for, I was going to say maybe, but raw tankiness. The thing is, the tankiness is the main thing that the Man-at-Arms brings to the table. They both have, like, 3-word names. Makes it a little... For some reason, I confuse those. But I'm going to put him in B tier. I'm going to put him above the Leper, because I think he does have a bit more versatility. He has support, and he does have a much more flexible bread-and-butter skill, which would be the Defender Retribution, than the Leper does. He doesn't have the damage that the Hellion has, but he does have a good stun. And honestly, Defender, then Retribution, then Rampart. So, you know, buff protection, guard an ally, then get the Riposte, and then try to stun someone. I think it's a good pack of moves, a good group of maneuvers. Is that better than the Arbalest, who just has really good raw damage and excellent mark damage? I think yes. I think it is. I think he goes to the top of B tier. He is the goodest boy right now. Our good old Man-at-Arms. With that in mind, the Musketeer's next. The Musketeer is the same as the Arbalest. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't, you know, I didn't get the Musketeer when it first came out, just because I just wasn't at that tier of supporter at the time. So I have definitely a proclivity towards the Arbalest, so she goes above. Other than that, they're exactly the same, so who cares? These 2 are basically the same class, which means they're both below the Man-at-Arms and above the Hellion, which sounds about right to me from a personal standpoint. Up next, we got the Occultist. The Occultist is interesting. He does have good crit chance. He has a good stun, which I definitely underutilize. But it is a strong stun in the first couple of positions, and he has plenty of trinkets that make that stun stronger, too. He has a very trolly heal. Sometimes heals nothing and gives you a bleed. That sucks. Definitely means he's not a top-tier healer, but he can be a very good healer if you get lucky rolls. His ability to attack the back row is actually something I really like on him. The fact that he can throw down a mark and a strong debuff. He actually has 2 good debuff moves. Actually gives him a lot of support utility. So, I think I could justify putting him in A tier. But if I do, I have to put him... I'm trying to think. Abomination, man. In human mode, he brings so much to the table. I don't think I like the Occultist more than I like the Bounty Hunter for the A tier position. But more than the Abomination? I think so. I think his ability to help slap down the back row. He has good moves for the front rows as well. So he's versatile in that way. He has a pull, which is actually very useful. He has a heal that can be great. It is a little trolly and fun. And he can work very well with mark teams, despite the fact that he himself doesn't get a huge advantage from a mark. So he's basically, if you want an all-marking team, he's your healer. He's the one you got. You can team up with the Arbalest / Musketeer for some extra heals, but he's probably going to end up being your primary healer unless you're incredibly unlucky. So I think I can justify putting him in the A tier based on all that. Up next, we got the Plague Doctor, it looks like. There she is. Plague Doctor, best blights in the game, 10 out of 10, hands down. Great stun that hits both the back rows. Pretty good accuracy on all of her moves. Incision, which applies a bleed, which is a pretty... it's a pretty strong move. She actually has some pretty decent raw damage. And Incision is pretty much her only move that makes use of that. Battlefield Medicine, which cures Blight and Bleed and heals. Very little heal, but Cure Blight and Bleed is very, very strong. Considering in a vanilla game, she's pretty much the only one who has a good one. She has Disorienting Blast, which is fine. I believe it still clears corpses in vanilla. I've gone through so many modded iterations of the Plague Doctor that I don't remember for sure. But I rarely use it anyway. And then, of course, Emboldening Vapors, which makes allies even stronger. I think she's easily A tier. I think she's easily top of A tier. I'm trying to decide whether she goes in S tier. And that's the hard part. Her blights, you know what? I think she does go in S tier. I'm thinking about it. Again, this might be like part my bias, part Red Hook bias, because she's a member of the Usual Suspects, like the original 4. But even in areas where they have Blight Resist, she has so many good trinkets that give her extra Blight skill that she can counteract that most of the time. And that is crazy good. So she can Blight anywhere. She comes with a good AoE stun on the back rows, which is where I usually like to have the stun, because those are the enemies that apply stress usually, and I hate stress more than I hate damage, at least inflicted on my team. She comes with an okay heal with status cure. She comes with Emboldening Vapors, which can really make the Highwayman or Crusader slap extremely hard. She brings so much to the table. I think she belongs in S tier. Yeah. What does she not have? if she gets moved to the front, she doesn't have much. That's pretty much it. Although if you do have Incision on her, she can basically still defend herself until someone else can move forward. So if you have these 3, for example, if she's moved to the very front, you could have the Highwayman built with Duelist Advance to move her back. And then if the Crusader's been moved to the back, he can Holy Lance to get him back in position. It works out. Her lack of movement is her only disadvantage, but again, the fact that she has a pretty decent attack that can still be used in the front 2 positions makes up for it. Alright, after the Plague Doctor, we go past the P's, and we head down to... Let's see, who do we got next? Going to the Flagellant. See, this is one where the word the actually went into the tier list order. Anyway, Flagellant. Bleeder extraordinaire, best bleeder in the game. Pretty straightforward there. A great AoE bleed on the back rows, a good bleed on the front rows. You give him some bleed trinkets, he can bleed almost anybody as well, much like the Plague Doctor. Exsanguinate gives himself a fantastic heal, which is amazing. I think the biggest problem is that his bleeds aren't on the level of the Plague Doctor. He doesn't come with... he does come with a heal for others. He builds stress on himself pretty quickly, and he doesn't have a virtue, which I think does hurt him quite a bit. Other than that, I think he's pretty darn good. I think he definitely goes in A tier. I don't think he goes in S tier. He's really good, but if you get a bleed, if you're up in a bleed-resistant dungeon, I don't think he's going to cut it. I really don't. But I will put him in A tier. I don't think I'll... I don't think I'm going to put him above the Jester, though. I think his stress heals and his bleeds are excellent. And I think his combination of utility plus bleed makes it better than just a Flagellant, who really brings just bleeds. He does... Again, he does have the heals, but his health has to get low in order to use them. I think he's more... I think the Flagellant's probably more fun than he is just, like, raw, purely good or purely interesting, in my opinion. Yeah, he's a fun class. He's a kind of a lull random class, I almost want to say. That's a little too insulting. But I think he's more fun than he is good in some ways, at least compared to the ones that are ahead of him. Okay, moving on past the Flagellant, we got the Shield Breaker, who I think easily goes to the top of A tier. Maybe, I don't think she has the raw damage or tankiness to go into S, but I think she does go to the top of A tier. Armor Piercing. Good damage. Not phenomenal, but good. Pretty darn good Blight. Not as good as a Plague Doctor, but still pretty good. A Block, which is rare. A, what else does she have here? A couple of movement abilities as well. Serpent Sway, and I believe Impale also moves forward. She has an AoE attack, which is fine. Not the most phenomenal attack, but a decent one. If I'm remembering it correctly from Vanilla. Again, I've been playing with a lot of modded versions of these characters recently. But I think she has more than enough to be an A tier, and probably at the top of A tier. The Shield Breaker is really, really, really good. But I think the Plague Doctor just has much more as far as overtime damage. Yeah, this one's probably... I feel like in my head, this one's the most controversial one. But I can't justify getting her into S tier. Not in my head, at least. So after the Shield Breaker, we have the Vestal. The Vestal. Best healer in the game, by far. Not the highest raw heals, that goes to the Occultist. But obviously lower heals, but more consistent heals are, in my opinion, better. The fact that she can't heal by 0 means she will always get someone off of Death's Door, which to me is more valuable than being able to heal by 16. So with that in mind, Vestal definitely goes to the top of A tier. I think outside of her heals, okay damage, a stun, which is nice. But really the main thing she brings to the team is heals. Heals, 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 which are great and are definitely A tier. I don't think she's good enough to go into S tier with it. But she is your premier healer in Darkest Dungeon. And I think she is above the Shield Breaker. I think Vestal's top of A tier as far as vanilla characters go. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. Alright, so here's your vanilla list of who I believe are the best to worst characters in Darkest Dungeon. A lot of A's, a lot of people who I think are great. Some B's, which are just good. Nobody went into the okay. I did put the Antiquarian. I was tempted to put the Antiquarian in the okay position instead, but I think once you get a certain amount of money, she's absolutely useless. There's no role that someone else wouldn't perform better. So, Antiquarian is going to stay in D tier. Crusader, I think, is the top one. Some might argue the Highwayman, and honestly, I wouldn't blame you for arguing that, but I think Crusader's absolutely insane versatility is better than the Highwayman's absolutely staggering damage. You know, you've heard the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. Well, the Crusader is jack of all trades, at least expert at all of them, because he does everything at least pretty okay. Alright, so with that in mind, let's start looking through the modded characters. Again, these are in alphabetical order. I can't remember which season I played all of these guys on. I've had 3 seasons so far, but we're going to start moving through and seeing what I think of these characters. Starting with the Acolyte. So the Acolyte has a mostly backline attacks, has some restoration skills, but they have a chance of diseasing your own party. I think that alone drops her ability to get into SA, maybe even B tier, because self-disease is pretty darn bad, and I don't like it. She can summon an ally, which can heal your own party, but again, even that can give disease. So I'm going to put the Acolyte. Acolyte is going to be in the first one into C tier, I think. I don't think she's as good as the Leopard. Leopard has big slaps. Acolyte doesn't do really nearly as much damage. Doesn't have nearly as much in the way of restoration, or healing, I should say, as some of the better healers. Really, there's nothing that someone else doesn't do better. And her kit isn't novel enough, in my opinion, to offset the fact that her stats are just okay, even at best. The Alchemist. So the Alchemist, I find, personally, a ton of fun. Alchemist comes with a Riposte, comes with Blight, comes with a decent amount of damage, especially in the first 2 rows. I believe the primary attack, or the first one on the list, has armor piercing as well. Don't quote me on that. Good heal that gets stronger based on other moves that you're using. She also comes with a couple of summon moves, one of which is a summon that protects someone on the team, the other one which does damage to enemies over time. That's a lot of utility. Obviously, the summons are broken during boss fights. Don't use summons during boss fights. But in almost any other condition, this is an amazing character. Easily A-tier material. I would say easily better than the Abomination. Better heals, more consistent heals than the Occultist, as well as better damage. The heals plus the Riposte plus the raw damage plus the summons, I think, put her above the Bounty Hunter and Flagellant. Maybe not Jester, though. The Jester's stress heals are amazing, and his damage is actually pretty darn solid, too, especially with the bleeds on top. I know the Alchemist has some trinkets that actually do elevate her a bit more in quite a few ways, but I think I feel comfortable putting her in between the Jester and the Flagellant. And more than enough damage to be ahead of the rest of it'd be kind of in the middle of the A-Pack, I should say. But this stress, man. This stress makes the Jester super valuable in a lot of situations. Especially where you have to worry about stress in the early to mid game. Next, we got the Alaroon, which I only used, I believe, in Season 1. I didn't use him that much. I'm going to be blunt. I wasn't too impressed by him. His strategy seemed to have been mostly move to the back so that you can use a move called Timber, which does a lot of damage and moves him to the front. Quite tanky, I should say. Maybe not very tanky, but quite. Had some self-sustain. Nothing that I found, like, super amazing about the Alaroon. At least not so much where I was like, oh, I have to play this character a ton more. So, I think I actually do like the Acolyte a little bit more than the Alaroon. I'm going to go ahead and position him like this. He's staying in C tier, but other than that, I think he's just okay. The Anointed, that's right. I was calling the Appointed. The Anointed is S tier, super easy. Better than the Plague Doctor. Better than the Highwayman, honestly. And yeah, I'm going to say it, better than the Crusader. The Anointed may be one of the strongest classes I've freaking had the pleasure of playing so far who's not actually broken. Huge damage on his first couple of moves. He does extra damage when he is marked. He has a move that marks himself. Okay, you see where that's going? He has a heal on one of his regular moves that does damage and then heals himself. He can heal the rest of his party. He can heal while defending someone. He can mark enemies. I believe he can destroy stealth with one of those as well. Or it might just be a pull. Now that I think about it, I can't remember for sure. But, I mean, his damage is absolutely insane. His heals are all over the place. They're not, like, super high. He doesn't heal better than the Vestal. But he can throw down a guard while healing. And he can make himself, he can up his protection and make it so he does extra damage while marked. He's just really freaking good. Oh, did I mention that his attack that does extra damage while marked also has complete armor piercing? He's really freaking good. He's really good. Like, on the border almost to being broken. Almost. Not quite. Maybe when I play him a bit more, we see some of his trinkets. They might actually elevate him to broken status. But with the other trinkets that I've used with him, he really just gets stronger without feeling outright broken. But yeah, he's an amazing class. Absolutely top tier. The Apostate. Very fun. Actually challenges the Jester for stress heal, which I think is by itself enough to put you in A tier. Great stress heal that only gets better when allies go under 50% health. A Condemn, which pulls enemies forward. She has a move that can give allies an extra move, with debuffs included, but that's just for balance, of course. Shoot. She can summon with trinkets. She can, I know there's a couple other good utilities on her. She has a move that hits 3 enemies with pretty reasonably high damage, considering the amount of AoE you get out of it. She has a move that buffs everyone when their health goes below 50%. I mean, she definitely is a class that requires a certain strategy, because she does best when either buffed up with stress relief trinkets, in which case she becomes the premier stress healer on the team, or one where you plan on having less than 50% health throughout most of the match. Oh, did I mention that she also has a block that she can apply on allies? Yeah, definitely higher than the Jester. Probably higher than the Highwayman. I think I like the damage that the Grave Robber brings to the table just a little bit more, but the Apostate is definitely an A-tier hero. Can't see her going any lower than that. Yeah, I just can't. She's amazing. Next, we got the Arcanist. Very unique graphical style on the Arcanist. Much more vibrant colors than most other Darkest Dungeon characters. I'm sure that was, in some part at least, by design. Very interesting class. 2 stances. Swaps back and forth between, I can't remember the exact names of it, but I think it's like Mystic and Elemental. So it's just a type of damage that he does. Or type of spells that he uses, I should say. Pretty good utility on the mystical spells. He can give everyone a huge speed boost for a couple of turns. He can remove all negative status effects. He can, one more. He can also stealth himself. That's the other one. Oh, and he could also move back for free as a free action. Yeah, that's already A-tier material. Now combine that with the fact that when he switches into elemental mode, he ups his crit chance by a ton. You give him a couple crit trinkets, this guy will crit every time for at least the first couple of turns of every fight. His crits are insane, and they go above the Grave Robber, who's another crit master. I think his damage is more than good enough to put him there. It's not amazing damage. Like, it doesn't beat the Leper or the Crusader on average attacks or anything like that, but the consistency of the crits make up for it. And his consistent crits are absolutely crushing. Up next, we have the Arsonist. Personally, I find the Arsonist a ton of fun. He's a very, very fun class. He throws a bottle, it explodes in the fire, bonks guys on the head, they take damage over time. Unique damage over time mechanic that does damage after the enemy's move. There's one other that has that as well. We'll be looking at them later. He has a poker that does some damage, can apply a bleed, can apply a mark. So he has a lot of utility there. He has a good AoE attack, even though it hurts himself a little bit as well. I think the fact that he has an attack that hurts himself, and he doesn't have anything that I think elevates him way above, like he doesn't have a hugely amazing move in any way. I don't think I can justify him in A tier. I definitely think he goes in B tier, though. I think he goes above the Leper. He has a little bit more versatility than the Leper does. He can also get rid of his own blights and bleeds. I think he goes above the Hellion because he can do more in more positions. And I think for that same reason, he should go above the Arbalest and the Musketeer. Question is, does he go above the Man-at-Arms, who brings stuns, protection, and team buffs to the table? And I don't think he does. I think some trinkets could probably change that. But I feel comfortable putting him in B tier, like a high B. I think that's where I'm going to put him for now. The Ashen Warrior. Alright, our wannabe Kratos here. He has probably one of the more unique fun mechanics. Damage reflection built into his kit. High damage reflection at that. Like, you build him with enough damage reflection trinkets and get his skill up for that, he can actually do more damage to enemies than they did to him on attacks, which is automatically, like, super fun. He has good damage himself. He has the ability to force others to heal him, which is a little bit of a fun move. Yeah, he has a lot. He's fairly tanky. He does a good amount of damage. I think he's really strong. I guess the first roadblock is he stronger than the Alchemist? And I think he is. His axe move is very strong, has lower accuracy, although his punch also has good damage as well. Not phenomenal, but good. I think he does go above the Alchemist. His raw damage and damage reflection potential is probably not as useful as the Jester's stress heal, though. So I think we're going to put him there. I feel like the Houndmaster's starting to look like he's in a little bit of an awkward position in between two good stress healers, whereas his stress heal is not that great, but I feel comfortable still saying that his backline abilities or his frontline stuns give him more versatility and make him a better overall character. The Barbarian. This is actually one of two Barbarians. This particular one is, we'll call him the Conan Barbarian. He brings probably the best stun skill in Darkest Dungeon to the game, which is it stuns more enemies as it levels up, but at max level, it stuns the first 3 rows, although it can also stun himself, and it moves him to the front of the line. Still, Wild Swing, the name of the move, possibly one of the best stuns in the game, possibly one of the best opening moves in the game, especially when built with other stun abilities. That alone, I think, rockets him up to A tier. I don't think he's the best A tier. I don't even think he's that great of an A tier outside of that. Most of his damage is very middling. It's okay. He does have a bleed move, which is fine. I believe his bleed is the one that can hit 2 rows. Although it might be... Actually, I think both his bleed and his more accurate attack can as well. So yeah, he definitely brings some AoEs to the table. He's fun. He's not fantastic. He's not phenomenal. I think he's going to the bottom of A tier. But I think just the stun move alone means he has to go in A tier. He can't go any lower. He just can't. Beastmaster. I love playing this class. He gets 2 attacks with his regular move. So he hits once, and then if you want, you can have him hit a second target. It's great. Plus, because they're both separate attacks, technically, you can get crits on both of them. You can get 2 crits in 1 turn. It's great. He also comes with a really good buff move for his allies, which can allow them to gain heal when they get a kill. It's pretty darn great. He has a riposte move. He has a stealth, and he has a move that can make him stronger on stealth. He brings a lot to the table. I think he goes into A tier as well. And that double strike alone, I think, puts him way up in A tier. Does it put him above the Alchemist? I think so, because he also brings good bleed to the table. So now he's got everything. He doesn't have a consistent heal, but he does have a heal. He doesn't have stress relief technically. However, his combination of damage and bleeds, stealth, and block, I think, make up for the fact that he doesn't have stress heals. Now, is he better than... okay, I think he's better than the Houndmaster. I don't think he's better than the Apostate, though. The Apostate, everything she has, like, in a bubble, all of her moves are pretty amazing, except for maybe Condemn, which is also pretty good utility-wise. But everything else is absolutely great. So I think I'm going to keep her above the Beastmaster, but that's a pretty close one. The Blackguard. Okay, so lower the torch, the stronger my favorite move his gets, which is Call of the Grave, I believe the move is called. It hits everybody, has awful crit chance, but it does pretty decent damage. Even at high torch, it does okay damage, but when the torch gets to low or an even better 0, this move can team wipe almost. Like, on lower levels, I think it could directly team wipe. At higher levels with damage trinkets, it's such an amazing move. Like, you do almost double-digit damage to everybody on the enemy team. That's A tier, easily. In fact, that's better than Ashen Warrior. I'm not even going to check. I'm not even going to compare to everyone else. It's better than Ashen Warrior instantly. But what else does the Blackguard have? Blackguard has solid damage. Blackguard has a lifesteal move, which is actually a pretty good one. Has a move that can make skeletons bleed, which is pretty good. It brings some self-sustain with the lifesteal and also the ability to up its own protection and make itself immobile, so it cannot be put out of position. So I think Blackguard goes way up. I think I'll put the Blackguard above the Grave Robber and above the Arcanist. So the question is, better than the Vestal or Shield Breaker? No. Mainly because you have to do a Zero Torch run to make those useful, which gives everyone above the Blackguard more versatility automatically. But the Blackguard is so good at Zero Torch that I think it does put you in that super high A tier ranking. Alright, if this was a personal preference poll, the bloat would probably be near the top. It's not, so he's not. I love the bloaty boy. Big, happy, diseased dude, just like me. But with that in mind, his blights are pretty good. The fact that he can blight 3 rows with it's relatively okay blight is awesome. He has a targeted blight, which is much higher against 1 enemy, which is pretty good as well. He has a bleed move as well, you know, AoE bleed, and another AoE blight move. He has a laugh, which comes with some stress relief. He can go ahead and put on some damage reflection on himself, I believe, as well. Yeah, he has a lot going for him too. But he's not... None of his stats are so high that it makes it great. And worst of all, he comes with a town event built in that can lower your provisions for that week by 50%. So that's awful. And I don't even think I can justify A tier because of that. It's that bad. But that said, for, you know, having a character that gets stronger the more diseases you get, a lot of fun. He brings a lot to the table. Definitely above the Leper. Definitely above the Hellion. Probably above Arsonist, Arbalest, and Musketeer as well. I like him more than the Man-at-Arms, but I don't think he's better at the Man-at-Arms. And bear in mind, I'm thinking of these characters as individuals, not in team comps. Probably something I should have thrown at the beginning, but you know, obviously, if you got a Blight team, you're going to want to bring Blight characters regardless of tier status. Of course, as long as they fit in their own positions, but by himself, I think the Man-at-Arms just brings a little bit more to the table than the Bloaty Boy. The Bluesman, another character I really, really like, both aesthetically and playstyle. He has a move called I See Said, where he removes his glasses, gets possessed by the devil, and gains a ton of accuracy, which is good because he's normally blind, literally and figuratively, as well as some extra damage on his attack. So he can do some great damage once he uses I See Said. He comes with some utility moves, which include some buffs. His stress heal is very limited and not amazing, but most of his kit is basically his damage, in my opinion. I don't use him too much for other things, just I See Said. So if you pair him up with a good stress healer, he's phenomenal. And even if you don't, his crit chance, in my opinion, has been pretty good throughout my playthroughs using the Bluesman. So with that in mind, I'm going to put him below the Ashen Warrior. I think the Ashen Warrior's high damage and damage reflection put him above the Bluesman's raw damage. Even if it does come with a, even if he does come with a riposte and some okay bleeds, actually some pretty decent bleeds, Ashen Warrior just slaps harder, which means he can in fights more quickly. I think that gives him a little bit more of a bonus. Bogatyr, I think he is a very interesting class, very well designed, looks cool, not that awesome. And I kind of hate to say that. He has a very fun all-team heal, which heals by percentage of max health. He has... The problem with that, of course, is that it's limited. It has a cooldown on it, which automatically... I think cooldowns will automatically take you out of S tier and will make it very hard to get into A tier. Because, obviously, characters with no cooldowns and strong moves are going to be better than characters with cooldowns, even if they have strong moves as well. And Bogatyr's moves are not that strong. He has a stress heal with Kiev and Kanto, which is actually pretty decent. Doesn't get to Jester levels, if I remember correctly, but it is pretty good. He has some pretty good stuns on him. He has extra damage on stun, so if he's paired with another stunner, he could be really good. But again, I'm taking him as an individual here. At least doing my best to. Yeah, he doesn't bring a ton to the table. I think he's good. He's definitely better than the Acolyte. So he's definitely in good tier. But I don't know if he's as good as the Leper. I think if I were building a team and I was like, I want to build a team that is both going to be fun and good, I don't know if the Bogatir would be on that list unless I was building like specifically a stun team. And even then, I think when it comes to what they do specifically, I think the Leopard does what he does better. Up next, we got the Butcher Bird. Butcher Bird is a character who has... all I can think of right now, the only thing that's coming to my mind is like that big mark that she has. She can mark, like, I think the first 3 rows, if I remember correctly, which is phenomenal with any mark team. But she also has a move from the back, where she can lunge forward and do a bunch of damage and bleeds. I think she's good on damage. She does some pretty decent damage. She has some team buffs, so some supporting skills. I don't think she brings enough to the table to put her in the great tier. I definitely think she belongs in good tier. But I think there are a lot of classes I like more than her. I think I'm going to put her above the Hellion. Above the Hellion. Excuse you. In position. But I'm going to put her below the Musketeer / Arbalist. I think the raw damage in the back and the consistent damage from the back is better than what the Butcher Bird brings to the table, even though I do like her design and I like how she fights. The Cannoneer is next. Cannoneer is interesting. His primary move has very low accuracy, but he has a move that buffs his... And he also has a move that buffs his damage by 300%. It also gets like a 10% buff every level up or something like that. So he can hit very, very, very hard, but he's not consistent with it. Especially since it has a chance to fail until it's at the top level, in which case you can get a accuracy debuff without getting the extra damage until it gets to the top level. With that said, at the top level, you know, if your fights are going to last more than 1 turn, he will destroy someone almost every time after that first turn. He also has a decent AoE bleed. He has some other AoE attacks that are okay as well. He has a riposte with landmines, which are pretty nice. I think he lacks trinkets. No, he does have a couple. But I've only gotten like 1 or 2 trinkets for him ever when playing as him. And I'm pretty sure I played with him in multiple seasons as well. I'm going to put him on B tier. I'm going to put him below the Bloat. I'm going to put him below the Arbalist. Or not Arbalist, Arsonist as well. Am I going to put him below the Arbalist? No. I think the Cannoneer is a little bit more fun. 2, can definitely do more damage, especially if you're not putting them on a mark-specific team. I think the Cannoneer's ability to up his damage by 300% and then blow someone away the next turn is more fun than the mark strat. And plus, you know, you can, if you need to change targets in between the 2 turns, you know, if you're using marks, kind of hard to change targets because you can't take the mark off of someone. But if the buff is on yourself, then you can just switch targets as needed. Not to mention the 300% damage is not to one skill, it's to any of his moves. So definitely a lot that could be used there to, you know, it gives him some variety. He is definitely a back row fighter though, although he has moves that can move him to the back as well. So I think he's pretty good. He's pretty fun. Cataphract, easy A tier. A decent spear use in the front. In the front row, she also comes with very good heals. An all-team heal, as well as a single target heal, which are both pretty good. However, my favorite things, great damage from the back with her bow. And she has moves that can move her back and move her forward. She also has pretty good AoE attack as well that moves her back. Easy A tier, probably high A tier, just from raw damage. Question is better or worse than the Ashen Warrior. That's our first roadblock, I think, for the Cataphract. And I'm going to say better. Heals in the front, phenomenal. So, you know, if you equip one of the heals and somehow you get moved to the front when you don't want to be, you can have that. Or you can use the move that wheels her to the back and does a ton of damage. So, she has a lot of versatility, like a ton. and she has great damage basically in any position as well. So I think A tier is pretty easy there. Moving on to the Celt. Celt just seemed like a worse Hellion. That's not completely true and accurate. I really say that because of the design. I mean, they look like you could tell one was made on the basis of the other, in more than just like their bones, their bone structure. But Celt doesn't have as much damage. Has some weird stun effects on her kit, and just did not seem that great. I did not play her a lot, I'm not going to lie, because I really did not think that she was bringing a lot of interesting things to the table. So you're going to go in low C tier. I still think... Here's the reason she's not going into D tier. Once you get late game with the Antiquarian, you don't need the Antiquarian at all for anything. The Celt could probably at least still bring more utility in late game than the Antiquarian can. So that's why I'm positioning them like this. I could honestly be wrong about this one. This is another one that in my head, very controversial, but I just did not think there was a very good class, to be honest. The Claimants, speaking of very good classes, gets 2 moves every turn. Sister moves, then brother moves. Brother has a lot of defensive utility to him. The sister has some damage. They both have, well, the brother has more damage, but the sister has a self buff, a little bit of damage with a pull. They can heal. They can get rid of blight and bleed. They can buff allies. They can protect themselves. They can stress relief. They could do so much. They're definitely an A tier. A lot of modded characters are. You know, power creep either means that more of them are going to be higher, or a lot of the earlier ones are going to be lower. That's how power creep works. You know, longer things go on, stronger they get. Now, where in A tier is the question? So let's start from the front of A tier, actually. Better than the Vestal? I don't think so. I think they have a lot of utility, but the thing is, to make that utility and give them 2 moves per turn, they couldn't have anything like incredibly powerful. Like the Claimants will basically never one-hit shot an enemy, for example. Whereas a lot of these other classes that are up here in the higher parts of A tier could one-shot an enemy. I mean, there's like a one-off chance maybe every like once in 100 battles that they could. Gotta call them they because there's 2 of them. But chances are no one-shots. The stress heal is actually pretty good and consistent, so I think that easily says that we're going to go above the Jester and the Houndmaster. The ability to cure blight and bleed is really good. Heal by max HP is really good. I think we can go above the Beastmaster, because Beastmaster gets 2 attacks on 1 skill. The Claimants always get 2 attacks unless they use the heal first, which sacrifices the second move for that heal. So with that in mind, I don't think they go above the Apostate. I think the Apostate brings better stress healing, better support skills to the table. A block is definitely better than a guard, because the block will completely nullify damage, and the guard just guards it, gives it to someone else. The Commissar. Commissar is weird, man. Commissar has a ton of damage, has a ton of buff moves that can either move allies forward or move them back and apply various buffs. Has a heal skill that moves allies back, but also can improve healing, if I remember correctly. Can tell them to charge at an enemy, giving extra damage to the whole team. But here's the thing. Commissar is going in S tier. I think it's the bottom of S tier, because the other classes are better at what they do. But the Commissar has stand your ground, which practically breaks the game. I don't think it completely breaks it, but it practically breaks it, because it makes your entire team immobile. So all movement strats out the window. Enemy movement irrelevant. Your chances or your skills are dependent on being in a certain position, guaranteed to be used. It is borderline game breaking, but I don't think it is, because it doesn't make it so that anyone becomes unstoppable, at least not by itself. But it does greatly strengthen any team she's in. Honestly, it's a good thing that she can heal by 0 instead of healing by 1, because if she had a guaranteed heal, she would easily be the top of S tier, I think. Because her damage is great. It is on par with Highwayman or Crusade. Well, maybe not Crusader. It's on par with Highwayman, except for point blank shot. And it has a decent crit chance. And every time she shoots with her main attack, everyone else gets damage buffs. She brings so much. It's kind of ridiculous. That's right. I said ridiculous. Itinerant Cook. I played with the Itinerant Cook a bit. Not a ton. But she's interesting. She's another stance character who builds up her heals by cooking food. And can also throw down some damage over time on enemies. And I believe has a move that causes others to buff her as well. Interesting character. I think she's good. I think she's about. I can't put her anywhere but the bottom of A tier. Because I'm thinking about it, I can't remember any like exact negative experiences with her. Unlike say some of these where I can feel sometimes that they're weak or out of position or something like that. The Itinerant Cook may have some. Actually, no, I'm gonna move down to B tier. Yeah. I'm gonna put her at the end of B tier. Yeah. Like I said, nothing that would put her down to C or D. She didn't seem bad, but she didn't seem as fun as some of the other classes, in my opinion. I enjoyed some of these others. Her skills really come down more to support and building up over time, which I like a lot of the other classes who can end fights quickly. If you look at the top tiers, you can kind of see that. There are exceptions, but yeah, I feel like I should play with the Itinerant Cook some more at some time. And feel out her character a bit more, but she's good. I don't think she was great. Corsair. Corsair's fun. Good damage in the front with regular damage attacks, a strong bleed in the front row, but in the back, some trinkets can actually give her some very, very fun combinations. There's an oil lamp that she can use that can give extra damage to Firecracker, which is their other primary move. And can do tons of damage. There is one particular trinket, which when added to her kit, will allow her to do, like, double-digit damage with the Firecracker every 2 turns. It is phenomenal. It is a lot of fun, but it's also pretty situational, which means she's not an S tier. I think she's in A tier. But I don't think her situational but very fun moves are better than the Barbarian stun, which is an absolutely ridiculous stun. I swear, if the Barbarian brought anything else to the table, he'd be like near the top of A tier. But he really doesn't bring much of anything else. The Conan Barbarian. The Count. The Count seems strong. He's one of the more recent additions to my Darkest Dungeon repertoire. He has a decent damage attack that gets stronger as the torch goes down. He has a damage over time skill that works similar to the Arsonist Molotov cocktail, where it does damage after the enemy moves. It's pretty good. He has lifesteal, which is pretty okay. He has a guard move, which is pretty decent. He can move himself up. He has a lot of decent utility. He has a lot of good moves. I don't think he's great. I do think he's good. I don't think he's better than the Arsonist. I do think he's better than the Cannoneer. I think that was pretty straightforward. Yeah, I think he fits right into the higher echelons of the B tier, but he definitely doesn't go into A tier. Yep. Sounds about right. The Barbarian, or as I would like to call him, the Croc Barbarian, because that's what I name my favorite Barbarian, who is going to be our first inductee into the broken S tier. This guy has 2 things that make him broken. One, he has an armor-piercing move, which does a huge range of damage, but when I say huge range, I mean like 20-something damage at higher tiers without trinkets. And if you crit, of course, don't forget it always does full damage plus half. So 150% damage if you want to use it, you know, talk like a normal person. So it always does that much on crit. So you get this guy critting, he can do 40, 50, 60 damage with just 1 or 2 decent trinkets. And on top of that, he has a move called Rage. If his HP drops below 75%, he can use Rage, which gives him a huge buff to damage, accuracy. A couple other things, it gives him Restoration for a couple of turns. The only real bad thing it does is it lowers his protection, so he can't have any. But who cares when you can slap for over 200 damage, which if you build it up enough, you can. Other problem is that it actually hurts him to use. It takes away some of his health. But, and here's the part where he definitely goes in S tier, if you get any trinket that allows him to heal himself on friendly move, he can use this move repeatedly. He can get his damage into hundreds of damage without crit. It is absolutely phenomenal. It's completely game-breaking. Don't give him a move that lets him heal himself. Don't give him a trinket that lets him heal himself on move. If you don't do that, he's still very, 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 very strong in the first two positions. He has a rush move that can move him from the back to the front, which is still incredibly strong. He can give himself a block in the front position with Iron Skin. He can riposte with a move from the front, which I believe is called the Claw or something like that. He can hit all the team with a pretty decent bleed, even though it does hurt himself. He can hit the first two rows with a non-armor piercing attack that still does a ton of damage. Yeah, he's really, 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 really good, even without that broken mechanic. But the broken mechanic is what puts him in S tier. And even then, you know, if you team him up with anyone who has a heal, he can rage for a long, long, long time, and he's very, very hard to beat. So, and I also believe that that move, the rage move, also buffs his speed, if I remember correctly, which means, guaranteed, use the rage, give him a restoration, then let him move next turn, if he moved last. So, let me talk back a little bit. Just move back 1 or 2 steps. Let's say you have no speed on him. He moves last in the turn. You use rage 10 times. He now has plus like 1,000 damage, and he has like plus 30, 40 speed for the next turn. He is now guaranteed to go first next turn, plus he has some restoration on him. So even though he's going to have no health, he's going to heal himself. He's effectively invincible for that one turn, for that little window. He's really freaking good. He's really, really freaking good. Alright, also, I believe the block will, if you put a block on him, it can avoid damage too, which means he could actually pair well with the Apostate. You know, use the block, then use rage. You get 2 free rages, basically, which is a huge buff on him. Anyway, definitely S tier. Dark Wraith. Pretty squishy. Very strong. He has really good damage at low torch, kind of like the Blackguard does. He has a wall that he can put up. Does reduce some of his health, but it makes enemies attack the wall, and it has very good protection. Very good defense, I should say. It's pretty strong, is what I'm getting at. He has a couple of AoE moves, which are decent, but... And, oh, he also has a very good lifesteal move as well. He's definitely A-tier material. I think he's better than the Cataphract, to be honest with you. But I think his lack of utility, other than that wall, brings him down. And the fact that he has to hurt himself to use the wall also brings him down a little bit. But he is very strong, and even stronger with a couple of good trinkets. The Druid! The Druid brings basically restoration. Lots and lots of restoration. So it has a Blight and Bleed move, which is actually pretty darn decent. There's one restoration move that affects the whole party and gives dodge to the whole party, which is kind of nuts. Decent stun maneuver. Decent pull maneuver as well. I mean, a lot of good things. No unique trinkets to the Druid, which I think keeps them out of S tier easily. But I think I can put her in A tier. I think I can put her above the Barbarian. Because she actually has some reasonable damage as well. Not to mention damage that heals herself. Which I think puts her above the Occultist. Above the Flagellant, yes, yes. I think this is where we start having trouble. When we hit the other modded characters. Alchemist. I think the Alchemist just has stronger moves. Definitely more damage, more utility, and a stronger heal, even though it only affects one person. I think the Druid has great heal over time, but the problem with heal over time is, as soon as someone gets knocked to death's door, they still might get killed afterwards. So in that way, it's dependent on how fast they move to see if they get healed again. So I don't think it's enough. I don't think damage, or excuse me, not damage. I don't think restoration over time is as good as just a good solid numbers heal. Up next, we have the Duchess, easy S tier. Phenomenal damage. Riposte. Good protection move that works for the whole battle. A decent stun move. Decent move forward move. She gets moved to the back. A lifesteal move. She has it all, and she has it all in spades. The Duchess is really freaking strong. Probably too strong in a lot of iterations. Definitely S tier. I would say above the Commissar. Just because the Duchess can almost solo dungeons. That's how strong she is. It feels like it a lot of times, especially with the right trinkets. Which I think is enough to actually split up Reynold and Dismas up here. Better than the Crusader, though. That's the question of the day. She doesn't have any support utility. But, man, her fighting skills are way up there. Yeah, I think I'm going to put her above the Crusader. Not above the Anointed, though. The Anointed is too good. The Anointed is way up there. Yeah, I think she's the second highest so far, not including the S+, not including the Broken Tier. The Duelist. Played with the Duelist a couple of times. Very recent to my repertoire. Very good class. Very fun to play. We have Riposte. We have a Guard. We have decent damage. We have very good debuffs. We have someone who can actually take away enemy Riposte. Yeah, I think you go in A tier. I think you do go above the Barbarian, the Corsair, and the Abomination. And the Occultist. Yeah. Bounty Hunter is where it gets tough. I don't think the Duelist brings as much raw damage to the table as Bounty Hunter. And I think her utility isn't that good compared to some of the others. I think if she had some support in her kit, that would probably help, but I don't think that fits the class so much, so I can see why she doesn't have that much in the way of support. But very fun class. I would say middle of the road, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Keep in mind, this is not like how good or bad this class is as a modded class. This is how I feel they fit, you know, as far as, is this a good Darkest Dungeon, good character in the Darkest Dungeon or not? And part of that is, a lot of that, for me, is strength. You know, you might feel like you don't want a bunch of S tiers, because that would make the game too easy. In which case, I would say, you know, download the Abyssal Establishment and Stone Queen's Court and come back. But as far as that goes, that's perfectly fine if you don't want, you know, if you'd rather play with a bunch of B and C tiers to make the game more fun for you. It's a single-player game. You know, do whatever you want. I'm totally cool with it, as long as you're having a good time. But yeah, I think, and with that in mind, I think the Duelist is a very, very good character class. Just not as good strategically as the ones above her in the tier list. The Enigma. Very interesting class. Never comes with any quirks whenever you recruit them. Always gets a buff move, which buffs himself and allies. And another attack, which can either be a heal or an actual attack. That alone, because those buffs are actually pretty darn decent, I think puts in an A tier. If you have trinkets that actually allow him to heal on move or on friendly skill, it breaks him. It practically breaks him, because you get restoration every single turn, no matter what, even if you need to do attacks. That effectively gives him like a heal and a attack every turn. So I think that alone is enough to vault him into A tier. Stoneboy, I think, is definitely above the Claimants, probably above the Apostate. Honestly, that's where it gets difficult. Nah, I think that's going to go below the Apostate. I think the Apostate comes with the block and the reliable stress relief and the ability to buff allies below 50% health. I think it's worth a little bit more than what the Enigma brings to the table. The Enigma is another really fun class, in my opinion. Definitely worth taking out and trying if you haven't already. I'd say that for almost all of these, but the Enigma in particular, still probably one of the more novel classes in all of Darkest Dungeon, at least in the modded. Eternal's pretty neat. Another recent one in my groupings. The Eternal comes with a Ultime Blight, comes with some decent damage, can up the Torchlight with her attacks, has a very, very unique move that applies restoration, and if the person they're using it on has full health already, it also applies a really good stress heal. Honestly, that was a brilliant move on the modding team's part. Whoever did that, whether it was one person or many. These days, I know a lot of these classes are made by a group of people, of modders, mostly in the Moonlit Dungeon area. So hats off to them. They are phenomenal at what they do. And this class was... That move was a brilliant addition. I don't think I've seen on any other class where it's like, oh, but what if they already have full health? This move's useless now, right? Not this one. Nah, this one still has utility. That's phenomenal, and I love it. Also has some jars, which actually make another one of her moves much stronger. I think she's easy A tier. Do I think she is? She's not S tier. No. Damage is not high enough, in my opinion, to justify S tier, but A tier easily. And honestly, trying to decide above or below the Enigma, I don't think above the Apostate. Again, that ability to give someone a block on the Apostate is really good, even though it has a cooldown. There's still plenty of moves that she can use in between that, so it's not like you use that, she has a cooldown, now there's nothing else you ever want to use. No. Last Rites, the stress move itself, is also phenomenal. I think I'm going to put the Eternal below the Enigma, but it's a close one. It's a close one, but I think the Enigma's 2 moves per turn, giving a buff, and also the way that he modifies his own abilities is both A, slightly more unique, and B, more fun to play as. He's just more fun in more teams, I think. The Exorcist. Ah, man, he is... I've rattled around in my head what I think of the Exorcist for a long time. When I first used him the first couple of times, I thought he was kind of weak. And then I thought he was really strong. And then I started thinking he was weak again. So, here's what I think about the Exorcist. He has a good blend of utility and damage. His damage is pretty good. His beat back with the Bible in the front rows is pretty decently strong. His Word of Power in the back gets stronger over time and is great against Unholy and Eldritch enemies. So he's really, really good in the Ruins and pretty good in the Cove. He has a pretty decent stun with a good knockback on it. He comes with a enemy mark and de-stealth ability for more utility. His heal sucks. It's a very low heal, plus it lowers speed. So I'm not a fan of his heal. Not really. Pretty much not at all. Good stress relief move, though. Not on par with the Apostate because it is percentage-based, although it's a high percentage. Gets stronger the more corpses there are on the field. It's still pretty darn good. However, he does have Proselytize, which might be one of the best single-target buff moves in the game. And I think that is enough. I think that's enough to outweigh the Apostate. Even though his stress heal is not as consistent as the Apostate's, he has more damage, and Proselytize is fantastic. It buffs an ally, gives them a block, though, as well. So, damage buff, block, and marks them. The buff actually lasts for the entire battle, and it makes them stronger as long as they're marked. So, since this move is on a cooldown, you'll have to use it every once in a while, but you can stack that mark buff. So as long as whoever he's using this on continues to stay marked, their damage will rise exponentially as the battle goes on. Amazing for long missions. Probably fantastic in the farmstead, even though I haven't taken him out too much to the farmstead. He is really, really good. Is he Grave Robber good? I think he has more utility than the Grave Robber. Yeah, I do. I think he has more utility. Is he Anarchist good? Maybe. I do appreciate the fact that they have the same pose. Yeah, I think he is. It's really close in my head. But I think the Exorcist does go just barely above the Arcanist. He does get crits a ton of times, and I do love crits. But when it comes to anything related to bosses, having an Exorcist on your team is almost invaluable. He's really good. In fact, you pair him up with another healer, and your team is, I think, going to be almost invincible, I feel like, between the block and everything else. Yeah, he's really good, and he can hold his own in a fight, since he has pretty solid damage. Yeah, he brings a lot to the table. The Exterminator, another recent addition to my kit. Find him a ton of fun. He has a bear trap that he can unload. You can load up. You can get ready to spring, and you can kick it at the enemy, and it's amazing. Very fun move. His main blight attack actually blights everybody, allies and enemies, but he can buff his own team's blight resist as well as bleed resist, as well as throw down a little bit of a stress relief move. It can only be used once per battle, unless you get something that allows you to refresh it, in which case he is arguably broken at that point. But he's very, very good even when you only use it once per turn, or once per battle. So I think he's A tier. I think he's above Claimants, but I don't think he's above the Eternal. Thing is, outside of his Blight maneuver and his Bear Trap, which again is so much fun, Sanitize is really good. He does have a pull forward as well, but thinking about it, I'm trying to think whether or not he fits above the Claimants and Beastmaster. I think he does go above the Houndmaster. But this is a toughie. This is a toughie. Because the Sanitize and the Blight maneuver are it's a very good combination. He also has a mark that can up the amount of bleed and blight received by the enemy, which is pretty darn amazing. I think I need to play with him a bit more. And until I do, I can't justify putting him above the Beastmaster and Claimants. It's very close. But I don't think I can. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of him being right here instead of like around here is because I like his Bear Trap move so much. Alright, next we got a Wraith. I say A because there's 2 Wraiths. This particular one doesn't seem super special to me. If I remember correctly, he can do some pretty darn good damage. My issue with him, though, is that he didn't seem amazing when I brought him to the party a couple of times. His design is just kind of okay. It's better than the Celt, a little bit, because the Celt is basically a reskin. At least this Wraith looks a little bit more unique than that. Has some stealth. Has some damage that can definitely get stronger over time. I believe he has some Blight and Bleeds that he can also reinforce and make better. So with that in mind, I can put him in good tier, and I think I can put him above the Cook. And I'm going to put him above the Bogatir as well. Not above the Leper, though. Not until I use him a bit more. Even then, I don't know if I will. But he was okay when I used him. Again, that was quite a while ago. The Falconer. I've used a lot of the Falconer. I love the Falconer. Another one where if this was just my personal opinion on how much I like these classes, Falconer would be up here, but it's not. Also have to take their strategic ability into account, which means she's going to be way lower. But Falconer just seems like a vanilla class. With all of its good and bad that comes with saying that, Falconer seems like a vanilla class. So good. Which is why Marvaseo works for Red Hook now, of course. But, very, very good class. Very good variety of moves. Also has 2 stances. Both stances, one is more debuff focused in my experience. The other one is more damage focused. Both of which are fun to play. Decent damage, but not amazing. I think she goes below the Arbalist and the Musketeer. If she had a little bit more support utility, I think she'd be a bit better. She does have a stress relief move, which I think was just okay. Not amazing, but I'm comfortable putting her in B tier. Definitely good. I don't think she's good enough to be great. The Fury class. Very interesting class. Another 2-stance class. I wasn't a huge fan of him, to be honest. He gets strong in one of his modes. I think it's called Chaos mode. It's Order and Chaos. In Chaos mode, he has a move that gets stronger every time it's used. It gives him a free move, but it also greatly debuffs his accuracy. The accuracy debuff is a little bit too much to really take full advantage of that. And if you take that mechanic out of the character, that takes away a lot of what I think makes him extremely unique. And basically neutering it by like a 3rd attack kind of takes the utility out of it. Especially since I believe you have to take a certain amount of damage to get into that mode, if I remember correctly. So, I can't put him very high. I think I'm going to put him in C tier. I think he's okay. I don't think he's better than the Acolyte, though. I think I like the Acolyte a little bit more than I like the Fury. Alright. Next, we got one I'm probably going to pronounce wrong, the Guqin. Very unique class. Part musician, part markswoman. Very strong, good stress heal on, I think it is on people who are guarding her. Can force guard on her, can heal. can lifesteal, has great damage, actually surprisingly phenomenal damage for the rest of her kit, which is mostly support based. Definitely A tier. Probably above the duelist. Probably above the druid. Yeah, with the combination of damage and restoration, probably above the druid. Her main problem is that she's pretty darn squishy. I think I'm going to put her below the alchemist. Yeah, definitely A tier, but below that. All right. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about that one. Harbinger. Was not a fan of the Harbinger. Now, I did hear the Harbinger actually got redone recently, if I remember correctly. I'm telling you, Exalus's mods. You got Fury here, Harbinger here. These two are going low. And in fact, I'm putting the Harbinger above the Celt, but barely. His mods are all over the place. I love some of them. Like, you got the Enigma up here. I don't like some others. Harbinger was one of the ones I didn't like. Had like 3 stances, and the way they switched between them was not that exciting or interesting to me. But was also like, I think if I remember correctly, one of the stances was like incredibly strong, the other ones weren't, and I just was not a fun class to try to untangle and figure out, in my opinion. So based on that, regardless of how strong you are, if you're not fun to play at all, I won't say not at all, but if you're not fun to play, then you're not going to get a high ranking not in my tier list at least. But I need to play them now that the Harbinger's been retooled, because I want to see what they bring to the table, nowadays at least. The Harlot. Harlot is really good, almost too good as far as a bleed class goes. Really, really strong bleeds on her attacks, which can be buffed even further, especially with the Pet Cemetery, or not the Pet Cemetery, but the Pet Catcher mod. She comes with a Forced Guard. She comes with team buffs. She can give someone an extra move. She's really, really good. Really, really strong in my opinion. Has a really good riposte move as well, which I believe can also apply bleed. She's a better bleeder than the Flagellant, and I will stand by that, even if it's a bad or wrong opinion. She's really good. And I honestly think her damage brings her above the Druid as well, and the Guchen. Probably not above the Alchemist. I think the Alchemist is kind of a hard wall here at A tier. Like, if you're not better than the Alchemist, then, you know, you're going to be on the lower half of A tier. If you want to get into higher parts, you need to get past the Alchemist. Speaking of getting past the Alchemist, the Heir. One of several heirs. But this one I'm going to call the Occultist Heir. Best heals in the game, no question. Like, absolutely phenomenal, crazy good heals. Good bleed attacks as well. An amazing buff. Arguably too strong, and she has Trinket Set that makes her even stronger. Easily top of A tier. I would say S tier. Her heals are much better than the Plague Doctor's Blights. Honestly, yeah. I think I'm going to put her below the Duchess. Only because the Duchess doesn't need those heals. And that's the only reason. The Anointed's still at the top. Yeah. Even though the Heir's heals are absolutely phenomenally amazing, her damage isn't nearly as good. The Anointed has phenomenal damage, phenomenal enemy debuff skills, good defend move, and heals all around. So, yeah, he's still a little too good. The Hive. Hive might be one of the most fun classes I've played in recent memory. I started playing him recently, like within the last month or two. Super fun. The Infest new Infest debuff is absolutely hilariously fun to play with. Definitely better as a damage over time than the Flagellant. He does have some big downsides, which is that he basically always has a Crimson Curse, and it causes him to get stressed out when he's sitting in the Hamlet. So you have to take him out regularly to use him. But if you're playing with a small roster, which means you'll be using him frequently, super fun to play with. Absolutely great. And taking that into account, I'm not going to worry about the stress because, you know, that's a little bit too situational based on how you're playing as opposed to what the game throws at you. So I'm not taking that into account. So with that said, what do you got? You got a dude with pretty darn good damage. You got a dude with lifesteal once his health gets below a certain point. You got a dude with an infestation mechanic who can apply bleeds. He can apply blights, which last as long as the bleed effects on the enemy last. He can Absorb health from infested enemies. He can get healed when the infestation leaves the enemy. And he has a move that can allow infested summon nests to appear. Summoned infested nests is what I should say. He's freaking great. Is he better than the Arcanist? Yeah, probably. Even just in even in fun, if not in utility. This is where it gets hard. These three. Hive, Arcanist, and Grave Robber. I do think... Oh, actually, no. I'm thinking this again. I don't think he's as good as the Grave Robber. And I think the utility skills and support skills on the Apostate and Enigma keep them above the Hive. The Hive, most of his skills are all about the Hive. About himself. And all the little bugs within him. So with that in mind, I don't think I can put him any higher, because everyone else, they either do absolutely phenomenal damage / crits, like the Grave Robber, or they have really good utility and support, like the Exorcist, or the Vestal. Or they have both. Like, I would say, I mean, I'm tempted to say the Blackguard kind of has both of the lifesteal, but the Exorcist really has both. The Arcanist definitely has both. He has some really good support skills. The Commissar, well, S tier is its own tier, so don't worry about the S tier. You let me worry about blank. Hollow Knight is next. The Hollow Knight, love the punch skill on the Hollow Knight. Love his design. His design is phenomenal. Really, really, really good. His damage is actually, like, middling to good. He's quite tanky. I don't think he is... I think he goes in B tier. And I hate saying that, because I love his design so much. He's kind of like the Bloat. And the Arsonist, now that I think about it. Where I love how they look, more than I love how effective they are in battle. They're still effective, and you can build a good team with a Hollow Knight. But again, if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for someone that's like mid-tier, you don't want to play with a bunch of borderline OP classes, you know, look at the B tier. You still got some really, really, really good and fun classes here. They're just not as, you know, fantastic in battle as the ones above them. I'm going to put him in high B. I'm going to put him above the Bloat. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put him above the Man-at-Arms. Hollow Knight's the new king of B tier. Everything he does well. When it comes to damage, he does good damage. He has some pretty good debuffs. He has a good self-heal. He can keep himself alive. Yeah, he's pretty good at everything that he does. He's not phenomenal at too much of it, though. Speaking of phenomenal, the Iron Buddha has a phenomenal block maneuver. He can give himself 2 blocks. What more you gotta say? He does decent damage. He has a couple of support moves as well that can debuff, mainly throwing down debuffs. I think just the block alone puts him in A tier. His block is so good. If you get someone else that can force the Iron Buddha to guard them, because even though he has all this block, he doesn't come with a guard, he would be phenomenal. But I'm going to put him at the lower end of A tier, because his damage is good, but it's not amazing. I'm going to put him above the Duelist. Yeah. Because I think the Duelist is like a cut above in most things, but is a more of a damage leaning jack of multi trades, like a guard, riposte, but not like super good at any of them. Iron Buddha does one thing super good enough to be like middling A tier. Lamia, another fun class that I enjoy playing a lot. She has 2 modes, Lamia mode and human mode. In human mode, probably one of the best single target supports in the game. Really good stress heal, really good regular heal with a Blight and Bleed cure. And the stress heal can remove horror as well. A decent pull forward as well in human mode as a debuff. And then when she transforms, really good stun, really good Blight. At least mid A tier. Better than the Alchemist. That's toughy. I think so. I think her supporting skills are better than what the Alchemist and the Bluesman bring to the table. And the Ashen Warrior. Not better than the Cataphract, because the Cataphract does have really good heals in the front, but also more consistent and strong damage. I think I would take the Cataphract over the Lamia most days. The Librarian. Librarian's a little tricky because she was retooled sometime after her release. So she played very different, and I actually wasn't a huge fan of the changes to the librarian. It sounds like it was, for the most part, buffs. However, she did retain a really good restoration skill that gets rid of Blight and Bleed, and a really good stress healing maneuver. So, those are very good. However, outside of that, her attacks are all fairly weak, and her other buffs are either now one-time use and not that strong, or just very, very low buff numbers. With the exception of the one that gives the enemy more damage received. But I think she goes in B tier now. She probably would have been in A tier before the rework. Again, being in B tier is not necessarily a bad thing. Where do I put her, though? I think it's lower B tier. I think it's below the Hellion, but above the Leper. Just barely. The Leper obviously brings more damage, but she's really a support, and you have to take that into consideration. And her supporting skills are fine. They're good. They're not bad, hence being good. With some trinkets, she can actually work a little bit differently as well, and pretty good. But not good enough to be like, this is a really, really good class. Pretty fun still. The Mambo. I really, really like the Mambo as well. I like pretty much every one of Ebony Betty's classes, I gotta say. Which would be the ones that we looked at so far. Worked on the Arsonist, worked on the Bluesman, and now the Mambo. I feel like the Mambo doesn't have like really good damage. She has some solid damage, some pretty decent crit on a couple of her attacks as well. Very good single target blight, an all team block, so she can block for the whole team, which is pretty darn strong. Although it does come with stress. She has a good stress relieving move and a good self-sustain move as well. I think that's easily A tier with all of that. The problem is, I don't think she's definitely not getting above the Alchemist. She is A tier, but none of her stats, including the stats on the moves, are really, really good. So she's not going above the Alchemist in anything. I think she's not going above the Harlot or the Guqin either. I think will put her above the Druid, though. Yeah, I'm going to put her above the Druid. The self-stress heal is the team stress heal is pretty reliable, even though it's kind of low. The self-heal / stress heal is actually pretty strong. The blight is good. The raw damage is pretty decent, too. So, yeah, I think above the Druid, below the Guqin. Milkmaid. Another one that I've only just played recently. A lot of fun. Can either restore the back rows when in the front, or the front rows when in the back, which I think is pretty unique and interesting. Decent blight, decent bleed move. Okay damage all around, but really the restoration and the heals are what they're about. Not as good as the Vestal in any of those categories. Don't think as good as the Guqin either. Really, I think the question here is, again, comparing with the Druid. And I think the Milkmaid does go above the Druid. I think the Milkmaid is more fun to play than the Druid as well. But statistically higher too. Yeah, I think that sounds right. Very unique way they did the healing skills. I do like it. I'll definitely say I like it. Also, one of the more unique trinkets I've ever seen as well on this class. Very fun. Has a different effect every battle turn, which is really, really neat. But I wouldn't put it in the mid parts of A tier. I think I like the Mambo just a little bit more. It's really close on that one. And they're both below the Guqin, and they're definitely below the Harlot. The Monk. Monk is strong. Monk very strong. He does a lot of damage. Can move around in different positions, which makes him very flexible. He has a really good move that heals himself and gives him a riposte. And on crit, he heals the entire team. He's definitely A tier. He's easily A tier. I think he's easily above the Alchemist and above the Ashen Warrior. Taking a look at the other big hitters in A tier. Is he above the Dark Wraith? Yeah, I'd say so. He also has a really solid crit chance as well. I think the only thing he's really lacking is probably, like, reliable stress relief. Honestly, I'm willing to put him up here. I think I'm willing to put him above the Claimants, even. The Eternal is a little tough. The Eternal has a lot going for her, but I think the Monk has a little bit more. I think he will go below the Hive, though. Hive is more fun. These two are pretty close. The Monk is probably better just raw stats-wise, but the Hive is more interesting. I think he's more fun to play in different areas, and all around, he also has more unique trinkets. Although, I will say this, the Monk's trinkets, from what I remember, are very strong. Even the common ones are very strong trinkets. But that said, I like the classes that are above him a little bit more. The Night Sister, which is something that I think has been reworked a couple of times. She goes way up. She's very strong. She's going in S tier. She has a pretty decent bleed. She has a decent de-stealth move. She has pretty good damage on everything. She has a strong heal move. She has a good stress relief move. More importantly, she has a move that has no cooldown on it that heals an ally and buffs their dodge for the entire battle. What? What? That's broken. That's practically broken. It's not completely broken because it doesn't give her a free move or anything like that. So, you know, that keeps it from being completely broken. But it's definitely S-tier material. I think it's better than the Commissar's broken move. Her raw stats... yeah, I'm going to go above the Plague Doctor. I don't think her damage puts her above the Highwayman. And even though that move is borderline broken, it's still not as good or as interesting as Crusader, Highwayman, Heir, Duchess, and Anointed. So I think we're going to put her in S tier, but it's not all the way up in S tier. The Omen Seeker never stood out, except for her character design a little bit for pretty freaking obvious reasons. But okay damage, a lot of debuff effects, a stun, but really nothing about her ever stood out to me and said, man, this is like an amazing class I have to take every time. I like the Chakram move. I said Chakram, right? Yeah. I like that move. The whip was pretty good. But nothing super standout. I'm going to put her on low B tier. I'm going to put her below the Boga tier. Yeah. Definitely not, like, just okay. Definitely good. But definitely not higher than that. The Paracausalist, one of my favorites. He's going in high A tier. Phenomenal damage for a back row. Easily better than any vanilla back row damager. Without mark. He doesn't need marks. He can hit the first 3 rows for double-digit damage at higher tiers. With a decent crit chance. He can buff his own damage even more. It does blight him, but if you have anti-venom, who cares? He's very, very strong. His only disadvantage is if he gets moved to the front, but he has an ability that does allow him to move back with a move that debuffs as well. If I remember correctly, not to mention he can pull enemies back or pull enemies forward, I should say. If I remember correctly. He's easily going way up on A tier. Is he above the Arcanist? Yeah, I think he's above the Arcanist, just barely. Is he above the Exorcist? Yeah, he is. And the Blackguard. And the Shield Breaker. He does have a ton of raw damage, but I don't think he's above the Vestal's. I don't think his damage is better than the Vestal's heals. Again, because they are consistent heals. Obviously, just raw numbers, he does do more damage than she does heals, but again, heals by themselves carry more weight in the game because as long as you can keep a person off of 0 health, you're never going to lose them. So, you know, something to remember. I don't think he goes... Yeah, he's not going in S tier. I almost wanna, but I can't. The Phantom. The Phantom, I like his blind throw move. He just closes his eyes, throws a dagger, and hits a random enemy. It's fun. It's not phenomenal. He does have an interesting move. I believe it's called Assassinate, where when he kills with it, the enemy doesn't leave a corpse. And that's a lot of utility on that move. I don't think he has anything absolutely phenomenal outside of like those kinds of moves. So I'm going to put him in B tier. He's good. He's not great. But I think he is near the top of B tier. Is he... No, I think this works. Yeah, Phantom. Definitely above the Man-at-Arms, who I think is better than the Bloat and Arsonist. Because, again, I don't think they do enough damage for what they do. But the Phantom does enough damage. He definitely does. And he has enough uniqueness to his moves. Plus, he has some stealth maneuvers as well. The Philomath. Very new to my kit, at least. Very fun. A lot of damage from the back rows. Has an all enemy team move. Basically an AoE, is what I should call it if I were using correct terminology. Can absorb stress from others. Can clear horror from everyone else, which is really good. Yeah, she's really strong. A tier, definitely. Better than Alchemist? Probably. Better than Bluesman and Ashen Warrior? I think so. And better than Lamia. Let me keep going up here. I think we're going to stop at Beastmaster. I think the Beastmaster, his double strike is more fun. He has slightly better utility moves than the Philomath. But the Philomath is definitely a lot of fun to play as. And I think the trinkets could actually change your game quite a bit. The Picaroon. Very unique class, definitely moves around a lot, loves to dance around the battlefield, but I don't think any of her attacks were super strong. She does have some good ones, and in fact, some pretty good AoE attack moves, but I think we're going in B tier for the Picaroon, because you need to have a class that can move around a bit with her, otherwise you're just going to be using her weakest moves. So with that in mind, I'm going to go with mid-B. I want to put her above the Cannoneer because her damage is more consistent than the Cannoneer, and it's still on the like good end, like good damage end of things. The Pit Fighter, dude, this guy is strong. He's going in S tier. He's going above the Commissar. Probably he's going above Dismas actually. Going above the Highwayman. He slaps extremely hard. He does have a little bit of a accuracy problem, but he actually has an accuracy buff move without downsides to it that makes that stronger. He can move himself forward from any row, so if he gets knocked back, that's no problem to him. In fact, it actually gives him buffs to move him forward. He has a heal move. He has I don't think he actually has a self-mark precisely. I could be wrong on that. He can mark enemies, or yeah, he has a move that can yell at enemies and actually kill them by calling their mums a pig. So that's pretty impressive. He has a good stun attack. He really brings so much to the table. The only downsides are that if he gets moved to the back, he has to rush forward, which again, buffs him up, so kind of offset. And he has no unique trinkets. But when you're doing double-digit damage, by the time you get to like level 3, who cares, right? Yeah, he's really good. The Powder Keg, another recent addition to my kit. I like him a lot. He has really solid damage, I've discovered. He can stun with a pretty decent, reasonable stun chance. He has a move that unlocks riposte, plus heals himself on the initial hit and on every riposte hit, which is actually really good. So he's definitely going in A tier. He's going in high A tier. He also has an all-team bleed. He pairs very well with the Hive. And I think he goes above the Hive because he has his raw damage is really good. Like, phenomenally good. I don't think he goes above the Enigma, though. The Enigma's combination of utility and damage is a little bit too much. The Practitioner. Another very recent one. Like the Antiquarian, starts off very weak and is built off of getting treasures in the dungeons. But unlike the Antiquarian, as you get those treasures, he gets stronger. However, he never gets phenomenally strong. He has a good heal. I like his heal move, especially when buffed up with trinkets. But his regular damage is on the lower end. He does have an all-team attack, but it has no crit chance, practically. He's not great. He's okay. I actually think I'm going to put him at the top of okay. Yeah, he's at the top of the okay list. Brings in a ton of money, but again, late game, you probably won't care about that. He'll just be, like, fun to play. Maybe he does get a lot stronger late game. I just haven't had a chance to play with it as much, but he's just okay. He's a very high tier okay. He's also, like, utterly squishy. Like, you know, like, very cheap stress ball squishy. So I can't put him in good. I can't. Privateer I can, though. In fact, I might... No, I don't think I'm going to put him in great. He does decent damage, both with his pistol, which actually gets weaker the farther back he is, and with his cutlass. Decent damage. He has a bleed with it. He has an all enemy team debuff, which is actually pretty interesting. He has some support skills, so he brings a little bit to the table. I think if Reynold is the jack of all trades, expert at most, Privateer is jack of all trades, okay at most. Which, being okay at almost everything does make you good. I'll put him above the Man-at-Arms. I think I'm going to put him above the Phantom, because I do like his support skills. I don't think I'm going to put him above the Hollow Knight. Although I do find the Privateer more fun than the Hollow Knight. Just barely. Just barely. The Prodigy. One of my personal favorites. He has a very unique flow to the way he fights, where he moves from the back to the front, and then moves to the back again. Obviously, if you can get the team moving with him, he can get to the back much quicker. But in the back, he has a move that allows him to punch the enemy directly in the face for massive damage, good crit chance, high stun chance. It's probably one of the most satisfying moves in the game to use, with the exception of another one who will be coming up later. Prodigy, I think, easily goes into high A tier, thanks to that, because all of his other moves are actually pretty decent damage as well. And even his defensive stance moves, which are supposed to be weaker by design, throw out debuffs on the enemies. So no matter what position he's in, he can always do something interesting, and if he gets to the back, he's basically putting on a phenomenal performance. So I'm going to move him high. I think he's comparable with the Monk, and I think he's better than the Monk. At least more fun than the Monk. Plus, he has a trinket set that actually makes his punch even crazier. So, very high. Very high A. Rescuer. Probably one of my favorite support classes. He has a good all-team heal. He has a pretty decent all-team stress relief move, although it has a chance to stun him. It's more reliable than the Houndmasters, and it's better than the Houndmasters. He comes with 2 dogs, better than the Houndmaster. He has a pretty good bleed attack that can hit all enemies. He really is better than the Houndmaster in every way. I think he's better than the Exterminator. He has a lot of support, which I think moves him up this very quickly. I think the Enigma is his first roadblock. Is the Rescuer better than the Enigma? Yes. Better than the Apostate? Yes. More damage, more consistent heals. Well, heals in general, I should say. He just has heals. And also his stress relief is on par with the Apostate. He can't stress relief himself with it, but his regular heal moves relieve his own stress, so it's a very nice little dance. His crit chance is actually really good, so I think he's going to keep going. The Exorcist, I think, is our next big roadblock. I think once you get to the Arcanist, every step up is like a roadblock. Is he better than this one? Okay. Is he better than this one? I don't know. Is he better than this one? Nah. Speaking of which, I think this is where the Rescuer stops. I think the Exorcist Proselytize is like still one of the best support moves in the game. Moves him way up there. And I think I'm going to stand by having him just above the Rescuer. The Revenant. Big bleedy boy. Really good bleeds. About all he brings to the table, honestly. He brings a lot of bleeds to the table, but he's not phenomenal with them. He's not as good as the Flagellant, so I think that's actually an easy roadblock and an easy stop right there. Revenant fills a very similar role to the Flagellant in that he brings a lot of bleeds, but they're not as good. He does come with a riposte instead of healing maneuvers, and although I believe he can make himself, quote-unquote, immortal. It's one of his moves, is immortality, which can help survivability. But the Flagellant, I think, just does what the Revenant does better. Next, we've got the Rightful Heir and Rightful Heiress, which we do have to judge separately because they actually have different move sets. The Heiress, other than being thick, is pretty strong. Actually, she's way stronger than the Heir when it comes to damage. Her pistol is very effective at the back rows, with either an AoE or a single target that gets stronger against marked targets. Her heals are not as good, though. She does not have as good a stress relief move. She does have a regular heal that is pretty decent. Heals herself and whoever she's using it on. Has the promotion move, which is pretty good. I think we are looking at A tier. I think the big question on everybody's mind, is she better or worse than the claimants? And I think the heiress is... I think the heiress is better. I think the heir is better. I think they're better than the claimants. But the heir is not as good as the heiress. Heir has better stress relief on others, although he stresses himself out when he's using his regular stress move, or his regular heal move. But he also has a better self-stress relief move. That said, Rifle Heiress's damage, I think, offsets the fact that she doesn't have as good utility and good support. But they both have promotion, which is a really good move as well, especially for getting some quick stress relief and getting leveled up quickly. So I think they are in high A tier. I think they are better than the claimants, all in all. I don't think they're better than the Eternal or the Monk or anyone above them. I do feel comfortable saying that they're better than, like, the Exterminator, Houndmaster. Philomath, I'm almost tempted to move Philomath up. But I think I need to use her more before I could justify that. The Ringmaster, super fun class. Absolutely amazing. Just swinging from the rafters, knocking enemies in the face in the first turn, bonking them with her big mace, and then putting on a little puppet show at the end. Good stress relief, decent damage, crazy buffs, especially the one that makes someone the star of the show. Actually a really good move. Definitely high A tier. I don't think S tier, but I think super high A tier. Better than the Grave Robber. Not as good as the Arcanist. That was a close one. Okay. The Arcanist also brings really good utility to the table. They both bring comparable damage, but the Arcanist brings more consistent crits, and I think that's what makes the difference in my brain. Ringmaster is probably more fun to use as the class, because she might be one of the most fun in the game to use, but the Arcanist is just a stronger character overall. The Ronin does not have his own trinkets, but he doesn't need them because he does a crazy amount of damage. He's easily A tier. He's got big damage, he's got some bleeds, he's got a heal and stress relief move, although it does stun himself. He has a really good riposte move, and yeah, that's all she wrote, really. He's just really good at what he does, and most of what he does is damage. Is he good as the Ashen Warrior? I think that's where we're blocked here. Actually, no, is he good as the Alchemist? I don't think he's as good as the Alchemist, now that I think about it. Yeah, I think she brings a little bit more to the table. He brings a lot of damage, but outside of that, you know, his utility and support aren't that amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. The Salamander. Salamander does not have a ton of damage. I wish the Salamander was a little bit stronger. Really good bleeds in the front row. She has bleeds. She has a lot of fire, of course. She has an all-team fire attack, which I think is fairly solid. She has a smoke screen, which can lower enemy accuracy, which is good. She hurts herself with the fire, with the all-team fire attack, which is definitely something to keep in mind. I think she's at the top of B tier. I think she's at the very top of B tier. Better than the Arsonist. I think Molotov itself is a better skill than, like, if you were picking out single skills from, like, both of their skill sets. Molotov is my favorite skill. It's more fun. But the Salamander's ability to move to the front row, get a stun, and throw down awesome bleeds gives her way more versatility than the Arsonist does. Even if she doesn't have the amazing damage that anyone above her has. Scarecrow. Another super fun boy. From the front, he can stealth everyone else, making it so enemies have to attack him. Then he can riposte. And on crit, his riposte gets stronger. That's super fun. On top of that, he has a restoration maneuver, which works on himself and whoever he decides to use it on. He has pretty decent damage. From the second position, from the second spot, he can hit all the enemies at relatively low damage, but still it's an AoE with no real downside to it other than the lack of damage. He has a Blight and Bleed maneuver, one that applies both of them to both enemies in the back rows. He's really, really good. He's better than the Exterminator, I think, pretty easily. He's better than the... Yeah, he's better than the heirs, I think. And the Eternals. Let's keep going. Keep it moving. Is he better than the Enigma? I think he's more fun than the Enigma. I don't think he's better. I think the Enigma brings us a little bit more. But the Scarecrow is a ton of fun to play. The Scourge. Another one of Ixalis' mods. Kind of like the Blight version of the Revenant, but much better. The Scourge comes with 2 stances, and in the second stance, he has one move in particular that has 500% accuracy, so it will never miss, and it does a ton of damage, and it can throw down huge blights. In fact, if you can get him a trinket that transfers blight to enemies, he becomes nearly unstoppable. I would say even with that, he's still high S tier, or not S tier. He's high A tier. Yeah, he's not Commissar good even. He's high S tier, especially if you team up with someone who can clear blights on allies. I think he's between him and the Hive. I think this is where he stops. He doesn't have the raw damage of a powder keg or anyone above him. He doesn't have much in the way of utility for his team, but he is arguably better at blights than the Plague Doctor. But again, the Plague Doctor, one, brings phenomenal blight chance, brings better, more consistent AoE blights, and brings more utility to the team than the Scourge. So those are the reasons I'm keeping her in S, and I'm having him fight in A tier. If you could purposely, I'm going to put him below the Hive. If you could purposefully get the Scourge to switch modes in some way, I think he would be way higher, because in his other Eldritch mode, he gains some super powerful moves. Maybe they were on a cooldown or something instead of just luck-based. But I get it, luck-based is part of the character. It's part of what makes him interesting as well. So I don't blame anyone for changing that. But I do think he's really good. I just realized I put the Scourge and the Prodigy right next to each other. And I'm like, is the Scourge better than the Prodigy? I think so. I think he's a tiny... No, I changed my mind. No. Prodigy's better. If this was a more fun contest, Prodigy would be way farther up. But no, I think he is better. I don't think he's that much better. Alright, the Seer. The Seer is squishy. She's blind, so she has low accuracy, but she has really good stress and heal maneuvers. I think she does... I think she fits in B tier. None of her skills that I've seen have really put her way up in A tier, and a lot of her maneuvers stress herself as well, which is not great. Although with a team that does blights and or bleeds and or stuns, she can do a ton of extra damage. So, but the problem with that is that means it's very situational damage. So I think she's better than the Man-at-Arms. I don't think she's better than the Phantom. In her role as support, I think there's a ton of supports that are better than her. And I think there's like, a couple of classes that are non-support that are just way better as well. The Seraph. Seraph has a really good design. I never really liked using her. She has really low damage except against marked targets, and she takes away marks when she attacks those marked targets. That's the problem. Ton of extra damage against them, but it takes away the mark, so it's only usable once, which means someone else has to waste their turn applying an extra mark. Doesn't work. At least not in the long run. Very fun and novel approach, and if you want someone who doesn't feel super powerful, I think that Seraph is a great choice. I think she goes below the Practitioner, though. I like the Practitioner's, one, in the novelty of you gain trinkets and they make them stronger. Not trinkets. You gain artifacts and they make them stronger for the rest of that particular expedition. But other than that, he's just kind of okay. The Seraph is just kind of okay no matter what, in my opinion. I know there's a particular strat, I believe it has to do with her taking damage, where she gets stronger at some point. But it was never really that interesting to me. Shadow Walker goes near the bottom. All of his moves seemed weak. He did have some blights. He did have some stealth maneuvers. And he did have some stuns. But every move I saw that he had, it also moved him around a bit. And he never came off as very powerful. I'm going to put him above the Harbinger only because I like his skill set a bit more. Same thing with the Alaroon. But I'm not going to put him above the Fury. I think he goes lower C. I guess that's mid-C, actually. Yeah, that sounds about right. the Shield Maiden. Now, I used the Shield Maiden early on when I started modding Darkest Dungeon, and she seemed awful. Like, she didn't really seem that good at all. It was like, what the heck is this character? It's low damage. She can protect others, but she doesn't really do anything with it. Then I discovered how the move Avenger works. So the Avenger, she's definitely going in B tier, and I think she's in the lower end of B tier even so. I'm going to go below, between the Leper and the Wraith, actually, and I'm going to stick with that. But, Avenger, you use it, she gains riposte. Every time she hits an enemy back, her damage gets buffed up. So, after, I think, 1 hit back, the damage is normal again. After 2, she's gaining damage buffs. And remember, the damage debuff from using Avenger will go away before the damage buffs. So ultimately, as long as she's getting attacked, she'll have more damage eventually than she's lost. So that's how she works. Very, very specific skill set, but pretty novel. It's pretty novel, and I do like that. I gotta give her credit for that, which is why she's not going in C tier. She was almost a candidate for D tier until I figured that out. But, you know, she's pretty fun. The Sisters. Pretty neat, honestly. 2 stances, of course. Can switch between them, and will switch between them quite often, because you have to manage her stress using those. One of them is very supporty. The other one is built for damage. Very, very fun, but I haven't used her in a while. But if I remember correctly, you could easily build her in such a way that she has a 100% crit chance. So that alone, I think, puts her up with the Grave Robber, if not right above. Probably not as fun as the Ringmaster, so I'm going to keep her below that. But she is very high A tier. She was very good. Problem was very positionally challenged sometimes, because certain moves can only work at certain positions. But if you were good at managing those positions, you could get her to 100% crit chance, and then forget about it. You're getting free crits. You're getting free crits. What's not to love? The Slayer. Easily A tier. I'm almost tempted to say S, but I don't think he has the damage output to S tier. I'm gonna put him between the Rescuer and the Slayer, or in the Exorcist. And let me tell you why. Really good damage. Running gun is really fun to use. It hits 2 rows. It does good damage. He has a pull forward, which pulls himself and pulls enemies forward, which is really good. He has a decent stun. None of these have amazing damage, although the running gun is pretty good. He has Rip and Tear, which allows him to heal himself and heal his stress while hurting the enemy. And he has Tag and Bag, which ups the enemy's damage received, which I don't really use that often, because I'd rather him just be doing damage. He has a move called Bound for Glory, which does it doesn't do anything like the very first round of the first battle. But as it goes on, as you use other moves, it buffs it up in various ways. You can have a lot of fun with that and make that very strong. And he is, in general, very strong because of that. However, he is primarily damaged self-sustained. He's like a much, much, much better version of the Leper, in that he's basically built around damage. That said, oh yeah, he also has a chainsaw move, which is also damage with a pretty high crit chance. That said, a lot of his power actually comes from his trinkets, which I believe are borderline overpowered. And without those, I think he does sit here. Although now I'm thinking about it, I have to take trinkets into account. Yeah, I think I am. With trinkets in account, upping his crit and accuracy by quite a bit, I'm going to put him above the Shield Breaker. He is very, very strong. I think the Paracausalist is A, more fun, and B, stronger when it comes to raw damage, but the Slayer has sustain and tankiness to make up for it. Yeah, I don't think he quite makes it up here, but it's pretty close. Yeah, it's pretty close. What's next? The Snake Charmer. Snake Charmer is a lot of fun. Has good blights. Has the ability to ignore stealth. Has a good stun. Has a decent riposte move. Can lower stress on allies. Has a lot of utility to him. I think he's another A tier. As you can see, the A tier is getting pretty full. I don't think he's better than the Alchemist, though. So I think there's a hard stop there at the Alchemist. Very fun, very good Blight class. But I think the Alchemist has more damage utility, at least in the front 2 rows, and more utility in the rest of the rows. He's a little bit more versatile. Although the Snake Charmer can be built for a lot more as well. Soothsayer is extremely strong, and in fact, I'm going to say S tier. I almost put her in S+, but I don't think she is. If she was able to get free moves easily, then she'd be S+. Soothsayer has a move called Calm Mind that gives someone 80% stress resist. That's practically immunity to stress for the entire battle. That's instant S tier. Done. S. Easy. She can use it on herself, too, to give her that same amount of stress resist. Combine that with the fact that she can lower allies' stress. She has a lot of damage for someone who's basically just using psychic attacks, like mental attacks. She's phenomenally strong. She's easily at the higher end of S tier. Not above the air, but I will say above the Crusader. Super good damage. Borderline broken support move. Ability to get rid of ally stress. Just really, 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 really good. Easily the best stress-related class in the game. Spartan. Doesn't do a ton of damage. Really good block. He can defend someone else, and with a particular trinket, he can apply a block on himself when he does so. So, honestly, it makes him very good at blocking. However, I don't think he gets out of B tier. And I do think he's above the Man-at-Arms, because he's a little more consistent with damage. And he also has a support skill that does apply some good buffs to the entire team. Is he better than the Air? Or the Seer? Air's a little bit farther up. I like him more than the... I like the Spartan more than the Seer. But I don't think he's better. I think the Seer is just a little bit better in moves. Come Together is alright. He does have a mark move, and he can take advantage of marks. But I still think he's just good. I don't think he's great. Stargazer. I know a lot of people have been telling me that the Stargazer is really good, and I've just started playing with him recently. His performance in my games has not been great. I'm not going to lie. His performance has just been, like, okay at best. But I can see the potential there. There's a potential to do a ton of damage with him. And he has some very, very unique moves that allow him to share a guard and heal someone else. I think he does go in A tier. But from what I've seen of him, I can't justify putting him above the Alchemist, or the Snake Charmer, or the Harlot, or the Milkmaid. I think this is where we're fitting. I think he's better than the Druid, better than the Flagellant. I don't think he can go any higher, though. So he's like lower end of A tier. What do we got next here? Just a little scroll down for you. Another Ebony Betty mod. We got the Steel Driver. Another class. Love the design of. He looks great. He is pretty strong. He's got an armor-piercing attack, so he's got some pretty good damage on him. He's got a bit of a self-sustain. Some stress issues, but he does have a high virtue chance to offset that. I think he's really good. He is, like, the perfect guy to take against the Thing with the Stars. Thing from the Stars? From the Stars, not with. I'm going to keep moving him up here. I don't think he's as good as a Philomath. I think this is where he stops. Philomath and Exterminator. He is better than the Exterminator. His raw damage is better than the Exterminator's mild damage and fun moves. He also has a self-mark that gives himself some pretty good protection as well. So, yeah, I think mid-A tier sounds about right. The Surgeon has some very weird moves. I haven't used him in a long time. And I don't think he's phenomenal. I think he's good. I don't think he's phenomenal. We're going to go to the lower end of B tier. Actually, we're going to go in C tier for him. Because a lot of his moves actually come with some downsides. He does have one called Disinfectant. Which actually, when applied with some certain trinkets, can be very, very good. Like, enough to bounce him up a couple of tiers good. But I'm not taking those into account, because those are other modded trinkets that are very specific. So, I'm going to put him below the Acolyte. Yeah, I think that's where I'm fitting him here. The Tactician. He's another one where if you have the right trinkets, he's broken. Straight up. But without those rate trinkets, I think he still goes in S tier. Why? Because he has a move that allows him to give someone else an extra turn. At the lower levels, he gets stressed for doing that. But at the higher levels, he doesn't. He just gives someone an extra turn. I believe it also lowers their speed. But he gives someone an extra turn almost for free. No attack, no damage debuffs, no accuracy debuffs. Just take an extra turn, dude. It's amazing. It's enough, I think, for instant S tier. His damage is middling. But he also has some all battle buffs as well. They do come with debuffs, but he has two moves. I think it's advance and fall back, or advance and retreat. They have the opposite effects. So one of them, for example, buffs damage and lowers dodge. The other one buffs dodge and lowers damage. But the debuffs are always lower than the buffs on the other move. So if you use both of them in the same battle, the result is you get buffs on everybody. Not to mention you get rid of the debuffs. So I think he's S tier. I think he's the lower end of S tier. I think the Commissar is better in every way except for giving the extra move. But I think the extra move is such a good thing to have for anyone to have that it puts him in S tier. Yeah. The Templar, newer class, extremely fun to play, pretty strong. His big bonk hammer, very, very strong hitting. Very high heal that heals by maximum health. But it does have a pretty wicked cooldown on it. He has a range attack that gets stronger as he gets hit. He has damage reflection that's actually starts pretty strong and then just gets better than there, of course, as you level it up. I think he's definitely A tier. He does not come near the Crusaders S tier because he doesn't have the same amount of utility, in my opinion. From what I've used of him so far. Again, I'll probably play as him more, and my opinion will evolve over time, as it will for almost all of these classes. Let's be real. You know, having your opinions evolve as time goes on and as new information comes in is a mark of intelligence. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But for now, I'm comfortable putting him above the Monk, but not above the Powder Keg, Hive, or Prodigy. But I think I can put him above the Scourge. Templar is very good, very fun to play as well. The Thorn. Thorn is an interesting class. Problem with the Thorn, I think, is a personal problem. Never seen a great performance out of the Thorn. Decent crit chance, good stuns, some bleed attacks. Really interesting move that heals everyone who's being guarded or who is guarding someone. Of course, she has a guard to go with that, and she has a riposte move. But for the most part, I'm going to go with lower A tier. And when I say lower, I mean definitely below the Druid. Definitely below the Bounty Hunter. I think I'm going to go below the Thorn. I'm going to go below the Occultist. Above the Abomination, though. Abomination is good. But I think the Thorn also has a reliable stun. Has two stances. Has an easy slap back. And if you build her with dodge, if she gets enough dodge, I think she goes way higher in A tier. Never reaching S, but way higher in A tier if you build enough dodge on her. But as soon as she gets hit, she feels a lot weaker all of a sudden. So I think we're going to stick with the lower end, just because the performance from her that I've seen has not been that great. Although, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm keeping her below the Occultist. The Occultist stun is better. And honestly, because of the poor performances I've had with the Thorn, I haven't found her that fun to play. At least compared to some other classes. So, I'm going to keep her there. The Thrall. Speaking of fun classes to play, I love the Thrall. Probably one of my personal favorites. Never comes off as overly strong, but he's definitely very strong. Good slaps. Decent, okay accuracy. Could definitely needs buffs to his accuracy. Not like balance buffs, but like in-game, you need to buff his accuracy, guys, if you want to use them. He takes stress on every hit, but he does have a self-stress heal move. He has a heal, which is pretty decently strong. He has a riposte move that can be used, that also does a little bit of damage to all enemies. He has a stun maneuver that can be used from any position, although it hits a random target. He has an ability to move him back to the front if he gets moved all the way to the 4th position. He's really, really, really fun, and he's pretty darn good. I think it's safe to say he goes to the mid A tier. Honestly, I think I'm going to put him below the Templar, though. Templar also does decent damage. The problem is, with all the stuff that I love about the Thrall, there are undeniable downsides to him. He's not that good outside or any farther back than the 2nd position. He suddenly becomes way less effective. He has stress problems almost no matter what. Although if you pair him with a Soothsayer, those go away because Soothsayer kind of, you know. But again, I'm not counting that. I'm trying to count just the Thrall himself. He doesn't have very many, at least that I've seen, unique trinkets, and they're not that amazing to his kit. The ones that up accuracy, for example, lower his damage, which I understand it. It's, you know, balance. But he's a lot of fun. He's one of my personal favorites. I don't think I could put him above, like, mid-A tier. The Torchbearer. Torchbearer is a very, very old class. You could tell because you can see other classes that have fire type effects, like the Count and the Arsonist. Torchbearer, they didn't figure that out at that time, so they just made it so that he hits someone with the torch and they blight for some reason. So, really old class. I'd love to see a revamp or an update of this class. From what I remember, he used the torch for some of those skills, and the higher the torch was, the stronger he was. Very situational. I think he does go into B tier, and I think he goes in the lower end of B tier. I'm going to put him below... Actually, I'm going to put him at the bottom of B tier. Nah, actually, no, I'm going to put him even farther down. I'm going to put him in C tier. Above the Surgeon. Yeah. Yeah, he was not that great, as I remember. His effects were a little hokey at the time, too. Especially since the torch... They couldn't really put a fire effect on the torch. So that kind of hurt how it looked. I'd love to see a revamp of that class. To see what they could do with it now. But as is, he's just okay. And barely okay, honestly. The Trap Maker. This is a good one. Really good damage. Really fun concept with the traps. He has a riposte move. He has an escape hatch, which can stealth him and move him to the back. He has an armor-piercing move. He does more damage against, or he has more accuracy, excuse me, against marked targets. He has a saw blade, which can bleed 3 rows, and I believe it, if I remember correctly, it does more damage as if they're already bleeding. He has a lot of great maneuvers. He's very fun to play as. He's definitely A tier. He's probably low to mid A tier. He's probably below the Alchemist. And below or above the Ronin? I think he's above the Ronin because he has a little bit more versatility in his kit, even though he doesn't come with any support skills. I said above, excuse you. And he's also, I think, quite a bit more fun to play. The Twilight Knight. Easy S tier. I mean, freaking heck. Probably the second highest. It's between the Anointed and the Twilight Knight. Twilight Knight has a good amount of damage on a regular attack, lowers her own stress on a regular attack, can absorb everyone else's stress into herself, and then start lowering that stress with regular attacks. Has a couple of leap-in moves that do provide her own debuffs, but also do a decent boost on damage. Has a very, very good riposte move, which has no downsides to it and buffs her dodge when used. That is such a good move. That if that was her only good move, she would probably still be in like high A, low S tier, because that is such a good move. No cooldown, buffs the dodge by like I think like 10 to 12 at higher levels, if not even more, per use for a couple of turns. So she's very hard to hit. She does a hit back with regular damage, or buffed if you have a riposte boosting attack, or riposte boosting trinket. Yeah, just phenomenal damage. Very good to riposte. The only thing she's really lacking is heals. which is what the Anointed brings to the table, and he brings it to the table so freaking well that I feel like I still have to have him right above. That, his heals and his armor-piercing attack are so freaking good that I still feel like he has to be at the top of S tier. The Veiled. Very, very fun class. Plays with his HP a lot. A lot of his moves lower his own HP. Has some of the best heals in the game. Like, the heals themselves, probably... I don't want to say compete with the Airs, because the Air has a phenomenal single-target heal, but are probably better than the Vestals. That said, they do come with downsides. He has a really good AoE attack on the last 3 rows. He has a lifesteal maneuver on the front row, which is actually a pretty solid attack. I think he goes in high A tier. I think he goes above the Blackguard and the Shield Maiden. I don't think he goes above the Slayer. Slayer is much better at what he does, which is raw damage, and that rip. If he didn't have rip and tear, he'd probably go. This would probably be switched around. In fact, he'd probably be way lower without rip and tear. But the Veiled is just slightly below. He also has some other unique quirks to him that make him a lot of fun to play, but he's definitely at the higher end of A tier. All right, the Viper. Viper's very fun. Snake Lady. She has a sway move so that she can move every turn. She actually shuffles herself on the next turn after using it, and it gives her a buff based on what position she's currently in. So, a lot of fun to play with that. Slug Shot does a ton of damage, and it's really fun when it hits. She also has an AoE attack on the front couple of rows. She has a bleed attack. She has a stun. She has a lot of good things, and she's very good at them. She doesn't have a ton of damage except on Slug Shot, but it has so much damage. So much damage. She's higher A tier, definitely. I think she's above the Powder Keg. I think she's above the Enigma Apostate Scarecrow Gang. And the Grave Robber. I don't think she's above the Sisters, though. I think the Sisters' ability to guarantee her own crit makes her a bit better. Sisters don't have phenomenal damage, which is why she's not above, say, like the Ringmaster or the Arcanist, who are a little bit more fun and also bring like solid regular damage to the team. The Voivode. Another guy who can basically at 0 torch have crits practically every turn with a decent bleed attached to them. In addition to that bleed, he can buff up allies by turning them into Darkspawn, which I won't say situational, but it makes dark runs much more helpful, which is basically one of his best perks. He has a decent stun attack. No damage, but it is a stun and it's a pull forward as well. He has a guard maneuver, which is pretty decent as well. I think he's in low A. I think he's above the Barbarian. I think he's above the Thorn. I think he's above the Duelist. I don't think he's above the Bounty Hunter. So I think the Voivode stops here. He's definitely fun to play, and he has some unique trinkets that can make his abilities much better. But I think everyone above him either hits harder, heals better, which, to be fair, he doesn't have heals, on allies at least, or has better support skills. The Werewolf. This is another one I haven't used in a long time. Very fun class. Like the Abomination, is a transforming class. Unlike the Abomination, you don't get to control the transforms as much. However, she has very strong moves in both conditions, human and wolf. In fact, has a really good AoE move in wolf mode. I'm going to say mid to low A tier. I'm going to say definitely below the Snake Charmer Trap Maker. Probably below the Harlot. Probably above the Mambo. I think this is where we stop with the Werewolf. Between the Mambo and the Gushin, Werewolf goes pretty solid. Not phenomenal in any condition, though. So that's the problem here. The Windcaller. Played this one a little bit a long time ago. Never had a lot of damage, but was a fun class to play because she could move both teams, actually, with her abilities. Lots of shuffles. For a team that works well with shuffles, that's a lot of fun. But other than that, she was only okay for most of everything else. So I think that's what we're going to go with, is mostly okay. Which would actually be C tier. I'm thinking right here, between the Torchbearer and the Acolyte. Yeah, I think I feel comfortable with that placement. The Wraith. This is Marvin Sayo's Wraith. Good bleeds, good pulls, decent damage, pretty good crit rate. Those are the things I remember about him. It's been a while since I played him. I think he's definitely going in B tier. I think with some trinkets, there might be some A tier material in there, but I think we're definitely going in A tier, or B tier, excuse me. And we're going just below the Hollow Knight. Yeah, I don't see us going anywhere above that. And with that in mind, we have to scroll down now to get to the last two. We got the Wretch. Another really good Blights person. However, the Blights are low, and it's over time. They are AoE, though. There's a lot of trinkets you can give that can give him stronger Blights. But all in all, he never seems like a very strong class, but he does seem like a very fun class. Especially with the ability to, like, give up his own Blights by yarking all over the place with Catharsis. That said, I think we're going in lower B tier with the Wretch. And way below the Bloat. I think the Bloat is a much better Blighter. In fact, I think I'm going below the Leper. And above the Shield Maiden. That sounds about right for the Wretch. Yeah. And then finally we got the Zenith. Ah, yes. The mighty Zenith. Extremely fun class. Dude has 4 stances, but he's probably the only, like, multi-stance person. And when I say multi, I mean more than 2. That I really genuinely have liked so far. He goes into Warrior stance, and then there's, like, Warrior 1, 2, and 3. And at the last one, he has a move called Faster Than Stealth. Faster Than Self. I can say words. I've done it before. Faster Than Self, which allows him to basically kill the enemy with FTL attacks. Faster Than Light. So, a lot of fun. Huge damage bonus on it. It's actually so strong that it doesn't need upgrades, so you can't upgrade that specific move. It's really good. It's really fun. I do think he is at least high A tier. I'm trying to think S tier. And I might have to do it. That Faster Than Self is such a good move. It is so amazing. He's got really good stress relief on almost all of his skills. He has a move that can disable enemy stress skills, which is actually really freaking good. I think his only real downside is he's relatively squishy. And sometimes you need to play with his positioning. But as long as he's not in the back, you can basically do whatever you want with him. I think he goes in S tier. I think he does. I think he goes right below the Highwayman. And the reason I say below the Highwayman is because the Highwayman's damage is more consistent over time. Like, the skills when building up to Faster Than Self for the Zenith, they're okay, but the Highwayman's regular shot is more consistent. He gets a decent riposte that does more damage than the Zenith, who does have a riposte, but it's mostly for stress relief. His point blank shot is probably as satisfying as Faster Than Self, even though it doesn't do as much damage. And there are some trinkets you can get with some trinket packs that actually make the Highwayman feel much, much better. But even not including those, I think the Highwayman is more consistent than the Zenith as far as performance can go. And the Zenith kind of relies on a battle taking at least 3 to 4 turns to build up, whereas the Highwayman can be better for like a quick finish. So I would say Zenith is probably more fun for going on boss missions, but the Highwayman is just stronger in general. And the Pit Fighter's better than both of them, at least as far as raw damage goes. He's kind of nuts. Hey guys, a little intermission here because I just was informed / realized that I forgot one of the classes, so I'm going to add them right now. Slot them into the end of the tier list real quick. And that would be the Samurai, separate from the Ronin, of course. The Samurai, honestly, not a fan. So-so damage, like so-so base damage. Gets stronger when bleeding, but mounts stress very, very quickly. Now, the Samurai does have a couple of trinkets I think are really cool and change up the character quite a bit, like one that provides a knockback on all hits and one that provides an actual very good stun chance on all hits. However, I don't think that makes up for the fact that he's way more gimmicky than good. I mean, if you want to play, like, you know, a very specific way of managing your character's stress and bleed status to make them effective, not even good, just effective, I think you'll have a fun time with the samurai. But for me personally, B tier is way too high. For me personally, I'm gonna put him below the Fury. So right there. All right, there we go. Someone I missed real quick. Accidents happen, you know. That said, I will go back to the regular outro and say I hope you having a good day. Or something. Anyway, that was a fun 2.5 hours, wasn't it, folks? That is it. This is it. This is your full list, your full tier list for the Darkest Dungeon, as far as I am concerned. Only one in broken tier. That is the Barbarian, who is absolutely broken. Even without the rage move, he would be high S tier because he just does so much damage on his regular attack. But then you can buff it up by like 300%. Okay, yeah, sure, fine. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Even buff his crit chance. Why not? Yeah, everyone else though I think is more or less more balanced than the Barbarian is. The Croc Barbarian, other Barbarian, as you can see, way lower. But again, I want you to take home from this the idea that just because someone is lower on the list doesn't mean that they're a bad character or poorly designed. Especially when you're thinking about your Bogateers, your Wretches, your Butcher Birds. These are all well-designed classes. They're just not as strong as the ones that are way above them. And, you know, if you want to play with a bunch of really strong classes, well, then you'll probably just be picking the ones from the higher tiers, at least from what I see are the higher tiers. And if you want something that's more quote-unquote balanced, or you want like a bigger challenge, you'll pick some of the lower tier classes. And that's perfectly fine. Ultimately, Darkest Dungeon's a single-player game. You play the way you want, and you have fun with it. And also, ultimately, you know, I gotta say, I've played a lot of Darkest Dungeon mods over the years, and the Darkest Dungeon has a phenomenal modding community with a lot of amazing people and amazingly talented people making some great characters. Given the issues, some of the roadblocks, I should say, of Darkest Dungeon modding that I know about just from an outsider's perspective, I've got nothing but respect for all the modders that have made all of these wonderful mods, and I can't wait to see what they can do when Darkest Dungeon 2 eventually comes out as well. Thanks for joining me, everybody, for this Darkest Dungeon tier list featuring well over 100 characters. If you enjoyed it, make sure to let me know by giving it a like. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe for more videos. There's definitely always some Darkest Dungeon on the way, in case you were wondering. Yeah, I do play it occasionally. And if you want to see more, subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching. My name is Thet, and I will see you guys in the next video.